by controlling the economics, politics, and culture where you live. And you can't do that unless you control the real estate, unless you control the schools, unless you control the police and the firemen. And we're not going to be able to do that until you control your mind. And so this kind of knowledge will help you take your mind back so you can be black and not be afraid to be black. Whether you want to call it whatever you want to call it, Kemet, Moors, whatever. Just in English, I'm speaking poor cracker English. I be's black, y'all. That's who I is. I is black. Freemasonry is African's child. This I put first, the Sphinx. This, everyone agrees that this is the oldest monument in the Nile Valley. This is older than any of the pyramids. No one knows the age. But there was a conference on genealogy going on last month in Bulgaria, one of those countries, and two scientists presented their, and they got an award for doing it, presented their findings that they've spent years studying, looking at the watermarks on the Sphinx, and from the watermarks, which was better calculated than anything that they've been using, it showed that the Sphinx itself is at least 40,000 years old. And I'm thinking it's 40,000 or 400,000. I don't want to really go crazy on it, but it's an enormous date. I think it's something like 40,000 or 40,000 years old. And we talk about the first dynasty as being 3,000 BC. They're talking about something that's 40,000 BC. Well, in order to have the head of the pharaoh, it tells you that the pharaonic political concept already exists. And then to look at what they've created, the body of an animal, the head of a human, and you know on top of the head was the uraeus, you had the vulture representing spiritual energy, and you had the cobra representing intellectual energy. And what it was saying that when the human animal is trained spiritually and intellectually, that the mind governs the animal rather than the animal governing the mind. That's an extraordinary concept, and it takes centuries to produce such a concept. And so the Sphinx speaks and stands there for the whole world to see that we are older than anything conceivable. And we know that it's an African. And then I just thought I'd throw this up front. This is Professor Small in Egypt, 1983, on tour with Dr. Ben. I was young, even had a little muscle on my arm right there, got my backpack on and everything, wearing my little kufi, you know. That was back in the day. And I'm in the Grand Temple at Luxor. So we look at Africa, this map. This is the Mercator map. This is the one that the German drew back in 1565, which most people still use, and it doesn't fully represent Africa. I did this just to deal with the deception of the European on the most simple level, on the level of a map. This is the Peters projection, which is done by the satellite and the computer imaging, and it shows the fundamental difference. Now look at this one. Take the Peters projection and impose it over what they have and see how the gray is the Peters projection. See how fundamentally different it is. Look at how the Greenland is almost as big as Africa in the Mercator projection, and it's just a little bitty island in the real one. And so they've been they falsely displayed themselves. They tried to make what we looked at. Let me go back. No, I didn't want to go there. Why don't you go here, here? Okay.
That's going back. This goes back. Yeah, you want to take it back? Yeah, that goes back.
Okay. I was hitting the wrong button. Don't want to hit the wrong button. Now, when you look at this map, look at the Greenland. They made it bigger than Africa. Yet you can fit Greenland, the United States, all of China, all of Western Europe in Africa and still have room. Okay?
Yes, sir.
So I put that up to show the deception that they play on us just as children in school and have us play on ourselves when we look at a map that is a false map versus one that's a real map. This I put up there to show the official languages of Africa right now, even though in every country we are speaking our indigenous language. Unfortunately, we're using French, Portuguese, Arabic, English, Spanish. Amharic is the only indigenous language that is the dominant official language in Africa. And I think Benin may have changed their language also to make their indigenous language the official language. And Ghana, believe it or not, is having the same conversation of moving English out of school as the dominant language and teaching people to the children in the Tree language. This map I put up to show how Africa was divided up by the colonialists into these countries that we now know. Each of these little pieces was a European colony and breaking up whole communities. The people of, say, Ivory Coast, Benin, Nigeria, Cameroon, Ghana, and they're all the same people. They're all the same people. But they've chopped them up into these different nations, yet these people were culturally, politically, spiritually the same community. Mauritania, Mali, Niger, this is all the same community. Chad, Sudan, this is the same community. Sudan, Egypt, Chad, Libya, all of these are the same people. These are not different peoples. We think they're different people now because Europeans have put different names on them. So when you look at the people who are down here in South Africa, who we call the Zulu, they once lived up here in Kenya and migrated down there over the centuries. And so we've always moved all over to Africa because there weren't no borders or boundaries. And so there is a one peopleness in African people. Though we have diversity depending on the ecology that we develop in, like the Khoisan in the desert and the Twa people in the deep forests here, or the Akan people on the plains here, or the people along the Nile Valley, depending on what ecology we were in, what food we were eating, what was necessary for the survival, determine what type of development happens over the millions of years that we've been evolving. And then we get to this mighty river, which is a very important river. It's only one of the very important river, and that is this Nile River that flows from inner Africa and is fed. We like to talk about the Blue Nile coming out of Ethiopia because we were taught about that so well by Dr. Ben. But this Nile develops way down in Africa, down below Kenya and Tanzania, in Lake Nyanza, which is Lake Victoria, they call it, but Lake Nyanza, and that is fed by many of the lakes and rivers coming out of Congo, and all of these rivers in Congo is feeding this river Nile, as well as the mountains of Africa, like Lake Tana, that's coming out of Ethiopia, the Blue Nile. We're very familiar with that. And this is Lake Nyanza, that they call Victoria. I just wanted to put a scene. This is Kilimanjaro. The snow from this mountain is flowing down to the lakes and going into that same river. Snow from this mountain is feeding the Nile. This is Mount Manzuri in Uganda. We don't think of the snow-capped mountains in Africa, but they have them. And people ski up here. There's ski lodges, and black folks is doing their thing, and we don't even have a clue. And yet this feeds into what is called the White Nile, and they all come together at Khartoum in Sudan. The Nile River in Uganda. I mean, look at that. It falls in Ethiopia. This is Dr. Carter G. He's explaining to us, if a race has no history, if it has no worthwhile tradition, it becomes a negligible factor in the thought of the world, and it stands in danger of being exterminated, like we are into right now with all the killing in our own community because our minds have been screwed up with being in the penitentiary and the prison system, being on medication in the school system, being on these parole things, being controlled by crackers in our very community, being forced to live economically where on We don't own a single business in our community. All these other people of color who's supposed to be our friends but have fully partnered with our enemy to exploit us is running the beauty parlor, running the clothing store, the grocery store, the hair product store, the washerette, etc. And we're going and they're talking about kapasa, salam alaikum, yo, brothers and sisters. No, brother and sisters, a behavior, not a look. Y'all got that, right? Okay. History is a clock that people use to tell their time of day. It is a compass they use to find themselves on the map of human geography. It tells them where they are and what they are. Dr. John Henry Clark. Yep, the ancient Egyptians were black. Now, if that's not black enough for you, one of the things we got to see throughout, we're going to see throughout, is that we wore our hair in locks in those days. Why? We hadn't probably invented the comb yet. And then it became one of the sacred styles because it was the first hairstyle of the ancestors, so you always refer back to your ancestors being the primal thing. And so...
And when you look at that, you can see they had their tools, they cut it.
Oh yeah, they cut it. Oh, you'll see. Oh no, you'll see carvings on the temple where the sisters and brothers are rolling the hair. Mainly the sisters are rolling those locks. You know, so we groomed ourselves that way. But I just wanted to open it with a statement because this whole trend we're going to see for the next 30 minutes is going to be black faces. I want to make the point because even now I hear people still questioning, is the Egyptians black? So let's just make that point as we go through, just enjoying the look. This painting from the tomb of Ramses III, 1200 BCE, shows that the Egyptians perceived themselves as blacks and represented themselves as such without possible confusion with the Indo-European, which is the Asians type, and the Semitic, which is the European type. This is a representation of the races in minute detail, which guarantee the realism of the colors. Throughout their entire history, the Egyptian never dreamt of representing themselves by the types B or D. And this is in the book. The source of this is The Civilization of Barbarism by Sheikh Anta Diop on page 66. This is in the tomb of Ramses. The Egyptians painted themselves as black. The Asiatics that Diop is called Indo-European is Asiatic looking and light skin, and the rest of Africa as black, and the cracker as the cracker. Okay? So they're very clear. This is what they left for us. This is the story they tell. This is who they say they look like. This is their prototype. But every shade of brown, remember, brown is nothing but shades of black. Let's get that straight, because we get confused and crazy stuff and have silly eyes, but I'm brown, I'm black. Browns are nothing but shades of black, brothers and sisters. And so they show themselves that the prototype for their essence and the cultural type by their dress is the same as they define themselves as the Comitian, as they define themselves as other Africans.
They got on that leopard skin.
Yes, sir. They're clear that this is to symbolize the cultural type, the dress, and then the skin symbolize the genetic type. Bloembo's Cave in Western Cape, South Africa, contains the oldest cave art in the world, 70,000 years old. And you can see we already organized because we're hunting together. We already got the bow and arrow. 70,000 years ago. And so there's no Kemet yet.
Uh-oh.
Okay?
On. Say that again?
There's no Kemet yet.
At this time, there's no Kemet.
There's no Kemet
so
yet.
We
down in the Bloembo's Cave 70,000 years ago in South Africa.
So if there's no Kemet, then there can't be no Christianity, no Islam,
no
Moors,
none of that.
No Hebrews,
no,
none of that.
None of
All
that.
right, go ahead. Talk about it.
Again, this is in Namibia, and what's significant is showing that this bow, which called what is it called? The oh Lord, my brain is not. Yeah, it's talking about the type of stress that comes with the bow. It's a very powerful bow, which they tried to say in earlier times was something that came from the Assyrians. Well, we're looking at it down in Namibia about 70,000 years before there is an Assyrian. Okay. This is in Chad, West Africa, which is just west of the Sudan. And again, what you're seeing, when you look at this picture, you understand we have already domesticated the cow. Okay? And these people out there herding their cows. This is a symbol of domesticated animals. They're not chasing wild animals or shooting at animals.
Crossbow?
No, it's called it'll come to me. Composite bow. The composite bow. The composite is talking about the strength it's able to do because of the shape of it. Again, the pre-dynastic cave, 80,000 years BC. This one is in what we now call the Sudan, or down where the kingdom of Karma would develop. And here we are with animals. We are hunting. But if you look closely, you'll see people have farm tools and other things. So we've already begun and are well into what we call a civilizing process. And so that area that we were just looking at is in here. Now, in this area here, which is Naphtali, is an area, this is below what becomes, this is Abu Simbel, Naphtali, which is in this area just west of that, going towards Chad and Lake Chad. All of the elements of Kemetic civilization is already present and found there. And there's a good book called African Genesis, which you can get on that, and another one which is called The Origin of Map. And you can see that that area, they found a civilization had developed there that was older than Kemet and had all of the components that would later make up Kemet by thousands of years. Just another map trying to show you where Naphtali was. And then on this map, where is it? Okay, it's down here. This is one of the things they found at Naphtali. These stones, some of these stones are bigger than Stonehenge in England. And it shows that not only did they have a clock, but they had a calendar. And it may have well have been also a place of worship. But this setup that they had in place, they could tell the time, and they could also keep time of the year and the seasons. This is older than dynastic Egypt. Again, another shot at Naphtali, one of those sites at Naphtali. And we look at the people from the kingdom of Yam. So people who have a problem with the people being black or think of themselves as black, this is how they painted themselves. Yam, the kingdom of Yam, is the area south of Kemet. And in the kingdom of Yam, one of the great kingdoms that developed before Kemet was the kingdom of Karma. And this is from the Magi temple wall there. And this is the way they painted themselves, with what we call nappy hair, or they've got hair locks, short locks, and these are soldiers, and you can see they have bows and arrows already. This is pre-Kemet. This, again, the people from the kingdom of Yam, as they are coming to pay tribute to the people in Kemet, bringing from the south gold, bringing perfume, incense, bringing animals and skins. But again, I wanted to show that they were black. They saw themselves as black and brown. They understood that that we were all these variations, not just now. We didn't just get brown when we came to America. People say, oh, y'all got to mix with the white man, so y'all brown. No, we were brown before Egypt, and we were black before Egypt. And the point of these photos is to show the blackness of things. This is the ancient kingdom of Kerma in the Sudan. This is somewhere between 3000 BC, but this is about 4,000, 3,000 BC. You can see the layout of how enormous these temples were. And this is some of it that is still left standing in decay, but you can see the fantastic geometry that had to be employed. And you can see here they were pillar temples. There is no Greek, there is no Rome, there is no Kemet yet. This temple in Kerma, which we rarely discuss, I'm going to be visiting this summer when I go to Sudan. And so this is one of the great kingdoms that would lead to the great kingdom that will become Kemet. This is the temple of Solab, is also in the Sudan. And in this area, these temples are pre-Kemetic temples. The ancient Egyptian had 3 written scripts. It's important to know because people like to talk about writing. When we wrote our scripts, there was no other written scripts anywhere in the world. You know, this is a pre-dynastic writing. I wish I had a little better focus, because these are pretty clear. I don't know how to get the focus much clearer for you. Maybe Sonetta, when he comes back, I can get him to work on that. This is the Egyptian hieroglyph. What's important about this writing system, which is the one we know better than any other, and oh wow, there's a nice cross right there. This system is written for the masses. Let me be clear. This system is written by the African elite for the masses who are not literate. You know, those who are literate and can read other kinds of cursive scripts because they're going to the universities. And yes, we had universities then. They created very early on a script that the masses didn't have to be literate to understand. This was another level of literacy here, so that you can understand what is being said because you know the ecology and the environment that you live in, so you understood what these symbols represented. So this is a represented symbolic language that related to your consciousness as your consciousness interpreted your ecology in the common way that your community interpreted it. And then you get the heretic script, which is the cursive form of that same hieroglyph that you just saw. You see this language. This is the same language, except it's in cursive symbolic form instead of in the pictorial form. And so this language is used for writing, for record keeping, and that sort of thing. And then there's another form of the language, the third form, called the Demotic script. People wrote treaties, love letters, I guess spiritual notes, in this even more cursive form. So these are three languages that exist. There's no Greece yet, there's no Hebrew yet, there's no Rome yet, there's no Latin yet, there's no English, or none of these things. All of them will have their genesis in these three language forms you'll see, which has its genesis in a language which they claim they can interpret it, called the Maradic script out of Sudan. But there's much more work being done in the Sudan now on that script, and we shall hear more from that soon. This is we're looking at this guy Petrie, which is this racist cracker who went down to Egypt in the 1930s as an archaeologist, and he took a lot of pictures and also was responsible for moving a lot of things out of there. So this is one of the early kings of what would become ancient Kemet dynasty. When you look, you'll see that many of the things that's going to make up Kemet is already in existence. It says Hethu. This is the temple. And in line 2 it says Seth, of the god Seth. So there's a temple to the god Seth. So this is pre-dynastic Egypt, but the god Seth is already a part of the discussion, and that means then the pantheon that we see in the pyramid text later is already in existence, talking about what we call the Netters or the Neteru. Net Anu, of the cities of the Anu people. And then Terraneta, the devoted one to God. So this king or this chief or whatever he is that at this time is not, he's a devotee at the temple of Seth, and he's also dealing with being a devotee, being Terraneta, being devotee of God. And there is no Hebrew yet, and yet we got people talking about being devoted to God, to the oneness of God. Yeah. There isn't even a Kemet yet, and yet this is pre-dynastic Kemet. So just to show...
Yo, I like what you're doing right now.
Yeah.
I didn't see none of the scholars that we got today, except for the Amon-Ra squad.
The squad is bad now. They're my boys. I got to give it to... Yeah.
They did that.
And so...
But you brother, oh man, this is powerful.
So this is the Scorpion King. I like the Scorpion King because I have a birthmark on my leg. That's a scorpion. And I always felt that I must be the Scorpion King reincarnation. Why else would the divine give me a big black scorpion on my thigh? And so the Scorpion King is pre-dynastic Egypt, 4000 BC. That I know we can't get that focusing. I was wondering, is there something we can do? Oh, it looks okay. Good. And so 4000 BC, we've got the Scorpion King. And so at this point, we're still not into dynastic Kemet yet. This is a whole development which should be called dynastic Kemet, because this is obviously dynasty, because we are talking about where's the home of Osiris? We'll go, okay. And I dropped the Rosetta Stone in because this is how the white folks say they figured out what we were saying in our writings, talking to one another. They discovered this piece of stone, I think in the 1800s, and they were able to break down our language and get into a lot of our literature. And they like to talk about the physical things, but they rarely talk about our literature. But that's just to make reference to it. It's not that significant for us. Now, Narmer is king of the first dynasty. And we're talking about this, the list of kings that's put together by this priest Manetho, and has been repeated, by the Europeans. And in terms of a dynasty, we're looking at him as someone who became the uniter of all of the different kingdoms. But when you saw Scorpio and you saw Anu, and there were others, they were kingdoms with kings and all of the religion of Kemet pre-Narmer. So Narmer becomes the unifier, it appears in history. And this is what's called the Narmer palette, and it shows him, fighting, and he's at war, and he's capturing a brother. But when you look up there, you see the falcon, so Horus, so it means the concept of the religion is already in place, because Horus is here prominent in the first dynasty. Hathor is here prominent in the first dynasty. And so we know that it takes thousands and thousands and thousands of years to arrive at this type of organizational development. So Narmer may be called the king of the first dynasty because he's a unifier, but he's certainly not the king, the beginning of rule, organization, theology, philosophy in Kemet. This is a part of the Narmer palette. We saw the palette here. And this is it again, because of this thing, according to Brother Theophile Abanga, this is his placenta. And how we know he's African, because African culture is the only culture in the world where a leader carries his placenta with him when he moves away from home. And if he goes back to visit his home village, he carries that placenta back with him, because that tells him and his people who he is. And you may look at this piece and think you're looking at a flower, but that would evolve into what would become the 6-point star, the so-called Star of David. Oh. That's odd, because that's thousands and thousands and thousands of years before these other folks come on the scene. So now I'm just going to walk through many of our great pharaohs, and both male and female, so that you can just see the blackness of them. So when we get to the Masonic thing, where I slow down, we're going to get to that, okay? First dynasty king, and this is a tomb at Abydos. You can see he's a black man. This is important. This is Abydos, the oldest city in Upper Egypt, 5,000 years to 3,000 years BC. Look at the strength and the enormity of these columns. There is no Greece yet. There is no Rome yet. There is no Sparta. There is no Parthenon or Python, whatever they call that thing the Greeks have. Yet the pillared temple is already, there's no Jesus, none of that stuff. And yet look at what we have perfected architecturally and in terms of masonry and mason construction.
Now see, hold on. I'm sorry to cut you off, but this is how you really go into a debate. If you really want to drive the point home, you got to go into the history of it and say, at this time, there's no Moors.
There's none of those people. The discussion we having now about a little 50-mile spot in the desert and what emanates out of it, irrelevant to black folks' existence. This is relevant to our existence. Look at this magnificent temple. Just look at the symmetry, man. Look at the symmetry. All right? You know, we're not even looking at the paintings, because what the paintings will show you, the Jed column, that this is 5,000 to 3,000 BC. Our religion is already fully developed. Our language fully developed. And none of these other people exist at this point.
Somebody said, Professor Small a Mason?
Yeah, yes, I am. I'm a Master Mason, Cornerstone Lodge, number 37, Prince Hall Grand Lodge, State of New York. I'm also a priest of the craft of the Shrine of Hunefa and the craft of the East as brought by Dr. Ben.
When our people hear Mason, they get spooked out and scared of that.
Well, that's what made me put this piece together.
Okay.
So let's go to the next one. Now, here's the Grand Master Mason right here, right?
Imhotep.
This is the Grand Master. I mean, it's like deep. This is the Grand Master. One of them, because they've obviously, before Imhotep, that temple I just showed you was built. So there had to have been Grand Masters before him. But this is one of the Grand Masters that we know,
Yes.
right? And he's the architect and the builder of the step pyramid and the complex, not just the pyramid, but the complex around it, this whole temple complex around the pyramids. What's important about this little black man is he's also called by the Greeks the father of medicine.
Right.
He's called Aesculapius, the god of medicine. So when you take the Hippocratic oath as a doctor, you have to profess an oath to Aesculapius, this black man, and his skills that Europeans in the form of Greeks learned from. This is the Step Pyramid of Saqqara, Egypt, the oldest stone building in the world. So we thought, but I found it really is not the oldest stone building in the world. It's one of the oldest stone buildings in the world. Built by African stonemasons, 2,630 BC, 62 meters high, 40 acres, the whole complex. This don't cover 40 acres, but the whole complex. There's a whole building complex and temple complex and tomb complex around that pyramid. And the fact that the precision with which these stones are all put together, there's no cement yet. Yet these walls are still standing. There's no cement yet. This is the part of that complex. Look at the intricacies, the niches that people, this is Master Mason work here. There's no Temple of Solomon yet.
Space came out and built this?
Yeah, the space around us. Well, the space around us. See, what I always tell people when people talk about men from outer space, remember, the Earth is nothing but a planet orbiting in outer space. Whoever's on the other planets are looking at us and say, those folks over there is in outer space. We are in outer space. We are made up of everything in space, all of its elements, all of its light, all of its energy bombards us, even now, wherever we're sitting, wherever we're standing. We are every and all things at once, and that's what the Africans call the divine. That's God. God is every and all things at once, the totality of creation, including you. We each are nothing but an expression of an aspect of the essence of divinity having our peculiar experience. Look at this brother. This is Zoser.
Zoser. Yep.
King of the Step Pyramid. Check out the lips. They break off our nose but make no difference. I just want to show the blackness. Is this black enough for you? That's what this lecture is about. Then when we get to the Masonry piece, I'll break down what I'm allowed to break down for you. And I'm allowed to break down what I choose to break down. So look at Zoser, African man. This is the bent pyramid at Dashur. This is the pyramid style that followed the Step Pyramid style. This is the red pyramid at Dashur. This is considered to be the first perfect pyramid in terms of geometrically perfect in the series of pyramids that is being developed. And of course, this is the most perfect. This is the pyramid at Giza. And then we back to the Great Sphinx of Giza again. I like this shot, which was taken by Dr. Asa Hilliard, because you can clearly see this is an African woman. I tend to think more of it as a woman than as a man. From this profile, she is a woman.
This is why Anthony Browder called it Herm-Aket.
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 Yes. Herm-Aket.
Yep.
You know, and like even Asa said right here, is probably older than Kemet. Well, it's been discovered now that it's older than Kemet by about 40,000 years. So we have to ask, who was we when we was building this here?
That's right. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So now I put this up. This is a drawing of the Sphinx by Napoleon's expedition. They were clear this is an African.
That's right.
And a woman. They're very clear. Look at the lips. Now these are the crackers. And they're clear that they're dealing with a black statue. This is Napoleon's people. This is the painting that they painted to take back home. Then we back to King Hetepsekemwe.
Now let me ask you, don't move that. Mm-hmm. Look at that real good. Mm-hmm. This is before Islam.
Oh yeah.
Look at the position that they now in.
Oh no, I got that covered. We're
All right.
gonna hit that. I got that. I got it.
It all comes from us, family. It all come from us.
Hetep's second way. I just wanted to show you his locks and show you his nose and his lips. You're looking at a little African man. He's the pharaoh, first pharaoh of the second dynasty. We had the first dynasty, we had the pre-dynasty, and they were all African. We entered the second dynasty. This is Sanketi and Nepka. This is the first king of the third dynasty. So they damage it a lot. They like to break up our nose, but they don't hide who we are. So we're clear that we're looking at ourselves. This is Pharaoh Huni. This is the third dynasty, 2599, 2575. He's the father of the brother we know as Seneferu. But you can clearly see this is an African man. And this is Pharaoh Seneferu, the builder of the bent pyramid, which I showed you early on in the third dynasty. Make no doubt that you're looking at yourself. I wanted to do this walkthrough from Pharaoh first dynasty to the 30th dynasty to just set the lies aside. We left our images in stone. You can't fool with that. You can repaint a painting, but even breaking off the nose don't change the image in stone. This is another king whose name is also Second Way. He comes from that same period. I just love this one because of the brother's profile, you know, and he's wearing his crown. I mean, he is wearing that crown, you know what I'm saying? And so I just thought that was a beautiful picture to put up there, you know. And the key thing was they had white paint. If they wanted to paint him white, they had white paint.
Right.
But they did not choose to do that. They choose to use white paint for his crown and brown for his skin. And like I said, brown ain't nothing but another shade of black. Okay, this is Khufu, the second pharaoh of the fourth dynasty. And check him out. They broke off Brother Khufu's nose again, but we still know who he is. And he's wearing his locks, you know, and here's Brother Khufu again. We found one that didn't have the nose broken off. And this is another one of Khufu in polished stone. And you remember, and this is his son, Pharaoh Khefra. And it's very clear. You can see this is an African man. And here's the pyramids. And the Sphinx at Giza. But this, look at that Sphinx again, you know, just to kind of see. And look at that pyramid. And remember this pyramid was...
Look how big that, look at the people.
Oh, yeah. And remember, this was covered in limestone, so this was all white with a gold capstone on top of it. So imagine, yeah.
If you look at the Empire State Building and look at this, he said you can make 5 Empire State Buildings.
Yeah.
With the majesty with the masonry of that right there.
So imagine this is an all-white sandstone, limestone, and the limestone was chipped off by the Arabs and the Romans to make their buildings, you know, to cover their buildings with what we call plaster. Right. And that's how it all got chipped off of the pyramids. And on top was a gold capstone. So imagine when the sun hit that thing, that gold lit up across the world. You could probably see it from Congo, you know. And so the purpose of it, I don't even go into the Orion's belt and all of those things. I just wanted to show you the majesty of the Sphinx as she stands guard in front of this enormous object. Oh yeah, I've been there many times. It blows your mind every time you go there. It's just dynamic because you know that your ancestor was doing this not just for fashion, but there's a science in all of this and how they understood the universe, how they related to the universe. This is a tool, this is an instrument that was involved in their science, in their math, in their technology. And these magnificent structures is surrounded by multiple acres of other temples and buildings that goes out for miles, you know, that we don't talk about very much. This is the last of this is the grandson of the first builder. This is the brother that built the third pyramid. His brother built the second, and his father built the second, and his grandfather built the first. And this is Menkaure and his queen. And this is the 3 pyramids together. And you can see here they're smaller pyramids. These are the queen pyramids, which people really rarely talk about, but they're queen's pyramids beside the king's pyramids. But they weren't just burial places. There was much more going on in these pyramids than about burial. And part of what we did on Earth was to deal with as above, so below. We were imitating certain things in the cosmology in terms of our ecology. But that's philosophy.
I got to do this real quick. I'm sorry. See, I just seen something very disturbing. And I looked on it at the right time, and it got Sarnetta. Somebody made a YouTube channel called Sarnetta, and they using my name to curse out the people. Now, if that's not wicked stuff, Professor, I don't know what it is. It could be a white man. Some people saying is old fraud is in the whack media. I'm not going to put it past them. Right. But I'm just saying somebody using my name to curse out people that's in the chat. That's not me. You already know that's not me. Go ahead, brother.
Yes, sir. There are those of us, many of us, and then there's the white boy out there too, playing and pretending to be us. And I've caught some with white girls on Facebook pretending. I even get them hitting me on Skype using African names, Ghanaian names, and the people. So people are always trying to disrupt our spirit. But the thing is, don't let the demon consciousness mess with your God consciousness. You understand? Let's move with our God consciousness, because we have a goal, and a goal is to reconstruct ourselves to perfect divinity. And if we don't do it in our lifetime, as we recreate ourselves as our children, give them the wisdom and knowledge we understand so they can perfect themselves even greater in their lifetime. So let's move forward. Again, this is Minkara, and I love this because this brother looked like he just buffed up out of the gym, and he's with God Hathor. And is this all right? Somebody, sister, is this Sister Ma'at?
We got to get ready for that one.
Yeah, you know, sometimes my brain gets. I know this is Hathor. This is either Heru or Ma'at, but I'm thinking it's Ma'at because it's her feather there. But there's also another symbol. And sometimes they combine the goddess, but this is showing that the king has the power of the goddess. The essence of these goddess makes up his character in terms of the force and strength that he represents. This is Jeffrey. This is the 4th dynasty king. They broke off the brother's nose again, but it's clear you're dealing with a young African man. We're looking at Pharaoh Neferefri, 5th dynasty. Again, it's clear he's just starting his locks. He's a young man, but you can clearly see they messed with his nose too. They broke off his beard, but he's an African man. And this is the pyramid complex at Abu Sir, 5th dynasty. We rarely see this complex. This one is this complex is has a 3 pyramid complex also. It's younger than the great one that we accustomed to seeing, but showing there's over 120 something of the or 130 something pyramids in Kemet. But you can see the entire complex of buildings and sites around the complex. Now, this is not the Giza Plateau complex. This is the Abu Sir pyramid complex, which we rarely look at. There, and a lot of deterioration is done there because, we have our enemy runs Egypt now, so they don't take care of our ancient symbols except the ones they think are going to make a few dollars for them. But we need to know that we have other ancient symbols that represents different reflections of ourselves as we try to replicate what down below as we see above in terms of the cosmology. Usar-Kaf. This is the 5th dynasty king. Again, just look at those nice African lips and that nose. I just want you to know that all of these pharaohs throughout from the beginning of Kemet till the end was all African men and women. This is their same pyramid complex, just another shot. This is not the 3 at the plateau in Giza. This is the Abu Sir pyramid complex. This is the place where you also find the Bent pyramid and the Red pyramid, not far from the Step pyramid at Saqqara. This is Pharaoh Teti, the 6th dynasty. And we're looking again at some other pyramids. This is pyramids of Pharaoh Sahurus and Pepi II near Saqqara. These are 6th dynasty pyramids. They've fallen into disarray, but they still exist, and you still know that you're in a pyramid complex with temples around them. This is Pharaoh Mentuhotep II of the 11th dynasty. And I always make a joke, they had white paint that they use on his clothing, dark brown to black paint on his skin, and red paint on his hat. So if the Egyptians were red, they certainly had red paint. If they were white, they certainly had white paint, but no, they chose to paint him black. And his features tells you he's an African man. This one I love. This is from the walls of the tomb of Khemset, the wife of Pharaoh Mentuhotep. I don't know where they found these Asiatic, but they found them, and they left this there, and they're doing the sister's hair. So maybe that's what they're mad about. This is Princess Ushhed, the daughter of Pharaoh Mentuhotep. You can clearly see the princess is an African woman. And this is Pharaoh Amenemhat, third Pharaoh in the 12th dynasty. Now this brother here, I just love him because he's just so African. It's crazy. I mean, he got his locks, and they sculpted in. This is him again. They broke off his nose, but it made no difference. This is him again. There's no way you can hide the blackness of Amenemhat the third. The Black Pyramid of Amenemhat in the 12th dynasty. It also is into disarray, but it's still there for us to see. This is Pharaoh Senusret, 12th dynasty. He found Menemhat, followed him to the throne. It's clear this is an African man. This is Pharaoh of Kemet. And I'm trying to show through this discussion is the Africanness of all of the dynasties. There is no such thing as no white folks running Kemet ever. Except where they invade us and took over our lands, but they weren't us. And we fought every day they were in our lands to get our lands back. So this is Senusret, the 12th dynasty. Pharaoh Nahesi, 13th dynasty. And then we ran into trouble. 1750 BC, the Hyksos invade Egypt. And En-Zo-Tef, this is the king of the Hyksos. And this is where they seem to have come from, somewhere in the Caucasus Mountains. And they made their way down the shoreline. This green area show the areas they're conquering as they come into Lower Egypt, Lower Kemet. I don't take the Pharaoh's hat. It'd be cool. And this is Pharaoh Nuperi. This is the seventh. He's the 17th dynasty. This is a dynasty, while the Hyksos is ruling in the north, our dynasties in our country is still going on. So when people talk, they talk about the Hyksos invasion like they invaded all of Africa. No, they invaded the northern part of Kemet, the northern part of the Nile Valley. But in the meantime, Kemet still functioned. Kemet was still going on. And this is one of the pharaohs of that dynasty. And I just threw this in, a Hyksos woman with her baby on her back. Because one thing we see about the Hyksos, they were a mixed racial group. They were not a European, straight out European grouping. So, when you get serious about this, you got to check out the Hebrew thing, because 1700 BC is about the time they said Abraham came into the Nile Valley. Well, he must have came in with the Hyksos because that's when they invaded the Nile Valley. And they would go out nearly 400 years later. So I wonder who that was, coming in and going out. But that's a discussion you need to have with our Hebrew brothers and sisters. They need to get serious about this history. This is Queen Ahotep I. She ruled Egypt with her husband Pharaoh Sequeneri Tau between 1590 to 1530 BC. They led the fight to drive the Hyksos invaders out. This is the mother of Chamos and Amos, these two bad dudes, Amos and Chamos.
Amos, I hear you, I see you, Amos.
And this is Pharaoh Sequeneri Tau. This is the father of Amos I. And this was a bad brother here, but his sons was bad. This is Chamos, who began the heavy war against the Hyksos. And this is his brother, Pharaoh Amos I, who continued that war against the Hyksos invaders. Then Pharaoh Thutmose, who's the grandson of the first brother I showed. Pharaoh Thutmose defeats the Hyksos and drives them out of Egypt. And this one, the baddest warrior in the history. We see Ramses as being a very bad warrior and a tough brother, but this little brother right here, he kicked ass and didn't take any names. And so it's very important to study his history. And this is Amos Nefertari. This is the wife of Thutmose I. This is her burial place. What's important about this is there's no Freemasons yet. There is no Solomon's Temple yet. There is no Rome yet. There is no Greece yet. And look at this magnificent pillar temple carved right out of the living rocks. Okay? And even before Hatshepsut's temple, you can see there was an earlier temple there, centuries before. This is a sculpting of Sister Hatshepsut. She wasn't the queen, she was the pharaoh of Egypt. And she wasn't the first woman pharaoh. Certainly not the only woman pharaoh, and not the first woman pharaoh. She got to be one of the best known of the female pharaohs. This is another shot, I think I took this one myself, of her temple. And this is her brother, Pharaoh Thutmose III, the brother of Pharaoh Hatshepsut. He takes over. This is another tough brother. He does a lot of building. He is the brother who constructs this enormous temple, which is the prototype for all Masonic temples. Even though they keep talking about this Temple of Solomon stuff, that ain't where it's at. I'm going to show you, This is tomb of Rekhmar, Visor for Taxation, Justice, and Foreign Affairs under Thutmose III. And I just wanted to show that even the workers and the technicians in Kemet were all black, of different shades of brown and black. Inside the Pillared Temple at Waset, this is the great temple that we built. We call it temple, but Dr. Asa Hilliard taught us that it's called Ipet Sut. It is a university. It is a training facilities that train people from all over Africa and Northeast Africa, which we now call the Middle East, during that period of time. This is where you come to study arithmetic, geometry, writing, medicine, and other sciences. This is another shot of they built a mosque on the Grand Lodge of Waset. Now, if the Muslims are saying all of these things are profane and anti-Allah, why they built their sacred mosque right in the middle of it? Because certain people are slick enough to understand when you build on hallowed ground. You build on sacred ground. And that's why that mosque, and it's still there today. You see this part of the temple right here? You can fit the Greek Parthenon in there about 8 or 9 times, if not more. And that's just one small piece of the temple. Let me show you. This is Brother Thutmose III Sphinx. Clearly you can see this is an African brother here. All right? Pharaoh of Kemet, 18th dynasty. This is Thutmose again. I just like to show him because we was out. Is that black enough for you? I mean, that's what we got to get with. They just trying to take our stuff. And so I just want to show you throughout our existence, it's all been black. This is the tomb of the noble. Noble Rekhmar again, Visor under Thutmose. And I just wanted to show you that the Tekken is already a part of our cultural institutions. They use this as a plow, but you'll also see it used as a part of the masonry tools, which I'll show you later as we get down. When Thutmose jumped on the Hyksos and drove them out, these were our original borders. And then he took our borders all the way to the Tigris, Euphrates, all the way up to Turkey, over to Rome and Greece. He expanded the borders of Kemet. And that's when a lot of people began to learn about us and began to hear about us. He conquered all of what is the Mediterranean. This is Brother Thutmose III, And then when we see the, let me see which space I want to talk about. So each of these spaces, we got these darker spaces here. The rim shows you where he took the kingdom of Kemet and conquering after that first invasion. And so what we get here is showing the kingdoms that we have in relationships with during the Amarna period. That's throughout the 18th dynasty period, right throughout the period of Akhenaten and King Tut. And these are the Tekkens built by Thutmose. Remember these because these are very important symbol in Freemasonry. Any cemetery you go into America, when you see abundance of these, many of them have the Masonic symbol on them, you know that that's where the ruling elite of America is buried. And one is up on 233rd Street and Webster Avenue. Hundreds of them are there. And that was the ruling elite of New York who was buried there. This is the tomb of Senefere, who was a mayor of Thebes under Amenhotep II. And I just wanted to show you the magnificent work that's being done in one of these tombs back in that day. This is all underground. These people who build these things had to be scientists. They knew geometry. They had to know trigonometry to get the stuff up and down those long stairs. They had to know algebra because of the pieces and the parts and the unknowns that had to be calculated and measured. So the arithmetic, the mathematics, the geometry, and the science necessary. And forget about the chemistry. The chemistry is off the hook because the colors are still there thousands of years later. So that's how our chemistry was tight. That meant we were well learned, well studied for centuries, thousands of centuries. Again, Amenhotep I, the son of Amos, Nefertari, and the brother of Mutanofret, and the second pharaoh of the 18th dynasty. Next is Amenhotep II, or Thutmose III, and then Amenhotep III, who's the father of Akhenaten. I just wanted to show you and see how black they are. They sculpt these things while they were alive. They told you what they look like. You don't need nobody to draw nothing or to put somebody in a movie. They're showing you, you don't get no blacker than this. Amenhotep III, the ninth king of the 18th dynasty, father of Akhenaten and the husband of Queen Tai. Looks like any other young black man walking around the streets of Harlem or LA or Frisco or Chicago. Then the great Queen Tai, the wife of Pharaoh Amenhotep III and the mother of Pharaoh Akhenaten, Amenhotep IV. Tai is an extraordinary lady. She and her husband, they ruled for almost 60 years. Now here's a close-up of a statue of Tai. I think this one is in the German museum. It's a very small statue, but it lets you see very clearly this is an African woman straight up. Here she is as a younger girl. It's probably a teenager in her late teen. Look like any other young African sister walking around the streets of Harlem right now. But that's the great Queen Tai of Kemet. This is her son, Pharaoh Akhenaten of the 18th dynasty, founder of monotheism, and I want to change that. He's not the founder of monotheism. He reintroduces monotheism as a concept, and is the husband of Queen Nefertiti and the father of King Tut. Now his queen, Nefertiti, was not from Kemet, and she was from this area up here, which is called the Kingdom of Mitanni, which would be what is northern Syria, where northern Syria touches on Lebanon, that area, or touches on Turkey. That was called Mitanni, and that's where she came from. And she was actually supposed to marry his father, but the father died. That was a bond of peace between the Kingdom of Mitanni and Kemet, but the father died, so the mother had her marry the brother, you know. But she was an African woman, so we're going to look at how African she is. So we see her mother-in-law, we know she an African sister, tough-looking sister too. That's her, again, Queen Tai's a young lady. That's her son Akhenaten. There go Akhenaten again. You don't get no blacker than that. Is it black enough for you? That's what we need to ask. When crackers talk to us, flash these up in their face and ask, is this black enough for you? Trying to just steal our images, steal our history, steal our essence, because we don't know how to bond ourselves into ourselves. But we'll get there. This is a painting of Akhenaten and Nefertiti and sculpting on the walls. Look at this man. It don't get no blacker. Look at sister, okay, with her locks. You know, this is Nefertiti. Yep. Not that false statue in the museum in Germany now. And this is Brother Akhenaten. This is another sculptor of Nefertiti. Those are African lips there. They can break off the nose. They ain't make no difference. But this is another sculptor of Nefertiti. The real Queen Nefertiti. Is that black enough for you? She had this chisel while she was alive, so she know what she looked like. So they take a statue and refigure it and put it in a book and give us in a history book. But this is the real Nefertiti right here. And I'm just trying to show you the black is black. Kemet was black from its inception till today, even though it's occupied by mixed breed and white folks. An artist's rendition of the city of El Amarna, which was the capital that Akhenaten and Nefertiti would build. And this you can see is a magnificent city, but this is an artist's rendition. But let's look at the real thing. This is the ruins of Tel El Amarna. You can see it was a magnificent city. Look at the big boulevards. Look at the streets. Look at the magnificent housing and temples that was built there. And you can see it was laid out in grids. This is a scientifically constructed city. That means you got to know math, you got to know geometry, you got to know trigonometry, you got to do arithmetic, and you got to be into the basic sciences. And this is their son, Tut, the son of Akhenaten and Nefertiti. Is that black enough for you?
Yes,
They chisel his blackness in gold. This is his sister, Princess Bakitaten, the daughter of Akhenaten and Nefertiti, and the sister of King Tut and Semkara, which is his brother. Is she black enough for you? She look like any kid off of the corner in any of our community or in any of our family, wearing her hair in her locks, looking just like the little black girl she is. And we know they had white paint, but they certainly didn't choose to use it on her. Another shot of King Tut, one of the famous statues, just to show you the nose to the lips and on. And this is him again. He had this painted while he was alive. King Tut in his apron. This is where I want to start checking out Masonry. This thing is called a mace in Freemasonry. This is what's carried by all of the Grand Masters of the lodge when they're presiding over the lodge. And this is the apron that he's wearing. So we're going to revisit that later. But I got a lot more to go. I just want to show the blackness. Here's King Tut and his black wife and his black self. And there's another shot of King Tut, so you can really get a good shot. This is one of the canopic jars that has his intestines and stuff in it, so you can get another look at how they saw themselves while they were alive or shortly after their death. This is how they saw themselves. Another shot of King Tut as a young boy. Is that black enough for you? These are the rulers of Africa, and at that time, the rulers of the world, as far as we knew the world. From the walls of King Tut's tomb, they had white paint and they had brown paint. And they choose to use the white paint for garments and the brown paints for the skin. I put this up because the sisters is playing the harp. And you know the harp, everybody try to claim the harp. This sister is playing what is a lute or what would become a banjo or a guitar. And another sister is playing a flute. So we've got all these instruments. There's no England, France, Germany, Greek. These are all barbarians running around the woods, chasing each other, painting one another blue and stuff, living in caves. When we up here, sister wearing cotton or linen and playing a harp. And when you lay the harp down and strike it with little wooden keys, it becomes a piano. But that's study. Ancient African medical books before Greece or Rome. A scene of medical tools and equipment with the women sitting on the birth chair, something they're just rediscovering today, that sitting on a birth chair, giving birth while sitting down, is the safest, healthiest, most unobtrusive way for a woman to give birth to a child. And these are different instruments that you can see that we were using during those days. So our medicine was advanced. It wasn't just herbal medicine. It was surgery. It was obstetrics. It was other abdominal medicine. We were into all the aspects of medicine, including brain surgery. This I thought I threw in because I thought this was like hell on fantastic right here. A tweezer found in King Tut's tomb. Now this is deep. They can't even hold claim to a tweezer because we done beat them to it. A tweezer. You know how significant that is? That conceptually you can come up with a tweezer? I know y'all think I'm being funny, but a tweezer, that's deep. You know? Now we run into another invader, the Hittites, coming out of what we know as Turkey and near the Caucasus Mountain. This group would again invade our land, and they would come in, and they will run into a brother who will become the founder of the 19th dynasty. The Hittites will invade at the end of the 18th dynasty and bring the 18th dynasty to an end after the death of Tut being the major figure in the 18th dynasty, but there were a few other kings in between. But Ramses would come, he's not coming off of the bloodline of the house of the Amenhotep, but he's coming off of, it'll come to me. But anyway, it's an African bloodline, and you can clearly see that Ramses I is an African man. And then we get to Ramses II as an African man. And then we get to the bad brother. Again, this is Ramses II, a builder of Abu Simbel, and the king who drove the Hittites out of Egypt. Clearly a young African king. And he builds Abu Simbel in his likeness. And this is Abu Simbel. The European under Napoleon comes and they're painted, and they clearly understand these are African peoples, so they paint them as African men. This is the Ramesseum, a temple in Luxor, Egypt, that contained public kitchen and school for workers of the children, or the children of the workers, I'm sorry. They had a public kitchen and they had a school for the workers' children. That's an advanced social concept. There's no Greece yet. There's no Rome yet. There's no America. There's no England. And yet, in the Ramesseum, you've got a public kitchens and you got school for the workers' children. You're talking about social construct. That's an enormous social construct in ancient Kemet. Pharaoh Seti I of the 19th dynasty with his locks. You know, they had black paint. They had brown paint. So we didn't just get brown when we got over here with white folks. We was brown when we was over there in Kemet. And so brown ain't nothing but a shade of black. And so here we are. Magnificent painting. The magnificence of the chemistry used, that the pigments of these paints still survive to this day. This is the hypostyle hall, temple of Amun at Karnak, again of the 19th dynasty. There's no pillar temple in Greece yet, no pillar temple in Ionia or Dorian or Rome. They don't exist yet. And look at the magnificent pillar temples that's existing in the 19th dynasty. Pharaoh Merneptah, 19th dynasty. This is a gold mask, but I just wanted to show you this is an African man, Pharaoh of the 19th dynasty. Temple of Amun-Ra at Karnak, 1,003 out of 10, 1,200 again, a 19th dynasty temple. And again, I wanted to show the pillar temple concept because in Freemasonry, they put a lot on the pillar temple concept and what this pillar temple is all about. And then they talk about the Ionian and the Dorian and refer back to the Greeks. Well, all of these pillar temples you've been watching exist, and there is no Greece yet, there's no Rome yet, there's no Ionian, there's no Dorian. None of that exists. They're just barbarians in the woods running away when they see us coming. This is Pharaoh Amenemopi, 19th dynasty. This is the tomb of the nobles, again from that dynasty. I wanted to show that the concept of the checker square was already in existence. We were using it as a part of our decorative arts, and that becomes significant when we start studying geometry later on, and when we pop up with the chessboard, which you'll see in this. Again, this is a tomb of Mena at Nakhet. I wanted to just show the concept of the Holy of Holies, and you'll see that the concept which will become central in all Western churches and even in the mosque is this concept of the Holy of Holies at the very back of the temple. I just threw this in because I thought it was a pretty picture right here. So that we were masters of the sea as well as masters of the land. And this is Ramses III, the second ruler of the 20th dynasty, being blessed by Heru on one side and Set on the other. Now in the West we always tend to make Set the devil and Heru, but that's not true at all. Brother Reggie lays this out nicely, and you'll need to go to Brother Reggie about this, because Seth represents one set of quality and attributes any strong man needs to have in his character. Yeah, he's got the Ankh. Both of them carrying the Ankh of life in their hands. And Heru represents another set of quality and attributes that all men need to have in their character. And when you have Set and Heru in your character, you in balance with Ma'at. You in harmony. But that's not what this is about. I just want to show the blackness of it. You know, this is the temple built by Ramses III. I did this for the magnificence of the pillars. There's no Greece, there's no Rome, there's no Parthenon, there's none of those things yet. All of the pillar temples that you've seen is built, and we ain't bumped into a white man yet. Usumair Ramses III of the 20th dynasty, wearing his Masonic apron, carrying his mace, just as you saw King Tut wearing his. All of the pharaohs were the grand masters of the temple, of the craft. Pharaoh Ramses III again. I just want to show you how black he is. So you look, you know that all of the pharaohs. Now we way up here. This is his sarcophagus, which I thought was a nice one. This is Ramses III mortuary temple at Medinet and Habu in Luxor, Egypt. And this is the front of his mortuary temple. This is where he's buried. And this is where they do the prayers and stuff for him. And this is the inside. And I just thought these pillows were just magnificent pillows in the way they're designed. And look at the size of the pillars relative to the human beings. And yet, there's no Greece yet. There's no Parthenon yet. There's no Rome yet. So my Masonic brothers, whose pillar temples are we talking about here? We'll get to that. Pharaoh Susenest I, the 21st dynasty, another gold mass. This remains the 21st dynasty temple of Amun-Ra. So that we were building temples everywhere. This is the Philae temple at Aswan. Even though this was rebuilt, the concept of the pillar temples exists before there's anything on the other side of the Mediterranean. So when we talk about the pillar temple representing the foundation construct of Masonic stability, when we look at it symbolically, then you've got to come to Kemet. This is Shoshengi of the 22nd dynasty, thought to be the biblical Shishak mentioned in the Book of Kings. Is he black enough for you? Now, we haven't seen any non-black pharaohs from the first dynasty. We're now at the 22nd dynasty. This is the 23rd dynasty, said to be a Libyan dynasty. And so when we look at even the people who are depicted as Libyans, who are supposed to be ruling in the 23rd dynasty, they got the Ankh in their hands, and they're Africans. Okay? Because, they try to make the Libyans white people somehow, and somehow they just show up over there as white from nowhere. And so, again, we're getting now to where we run into some real serious invasions. We're getting the Assyrian Empire rising up at 1,800, going to 1,600 BC. So they're going to, again, move on us, and we're going to find ourselves in deep trouble. Once the Assyrian moves in, we took quite a beating. So this yellow you'll see is the empire, and they come all the way down to Thebes, and we had war with them for quite a while. And this is one of the Assyrian king, Shalmaneser. This is how he looked. Now we're getting with the real white folks. I found these are supposed to be exiled Hebrew musicians, a relief from Nineveh in 678 BC. During that period of the Assyrian invasion, you see they got locks. You clearly see that they're Africans, and you see that their beards, as the little dot wants to let you know that that's nappy beards. So we go further. The ancient Hebrews being taken into captivity by the Assyrians from the palace walls at Sennacherib. That's the 680 BC. The Assyrians got their long curly hair, and the Africans have their little dots. So those who call themselves Hebrews can say they're Africans, but they got to explain what that means relative to the rest of the Africans. They weren't special. They got to say how they got caught in the catch-22 of the invaders and had to set up based on what they had left. I think it's Ivan Van Sertima that talk about if you take an egg and you smash it, the eggshells shatter in all these little pieces. So people take a piece of the eggshell and say, I'm the egg. But they represent only a piece of the shattered eggshell. Oh, yeah, I threw this up because we be talking about this Abrahamic stuff all the time. So circumcision in Kemet before Abraham. See right here, the brother is tying off the penis so he can stop the flow of blood. So when they cut off the skin, he won't bleed to death. And this is the brother here carrying out the actual task. And so even in their own literature, they claim that Abraham was told by the Canaanites, who was also clearly Kemetians and Africans, that he couldn't come among them because he was unclean, and the Canaanites circumcised him. So that's not a Hebrew tradition. That's an African tradition. And then we have this brother showing up on the scene. After the Assyrians had beat up on us for some time, out popped the 25th dynasty and a brother from down around Sudan named, this is Pianki. That's the brother of Shabaka and the uncle of Taharka. So, and this is his brother Shabaka, 25th dynasty, waged war against the Assyrian invaders. He's just as black as his brother. They broke off his nose too. But let's look at him again, how they painted themselves. The Pharaoh Shabaka and his queen. I don't know whether this is original paint or it, and it may well be, because we were black and we were brown. He's from deeper Sudan, so he might be a little darker than a sister who might have been born around Aswan or Luxor. This is his son, Prince Horamakhet, son of Shabaka, and the high priest of Amun in Thebes during the reign of his father and his two successors. One of those successors would be his brother. So if you think he don't look black enough, he's a black young man with an ankh around his neck who is the priest. But let's look at his brother. Pharaoh Tahaka, son of Shabaka, succeeds in driving the Assyrian invaders out of Egypt. He's the only pharaoh mentioned in the Bible, I should say, by name, by his actual name. And it's the book of Isaiah. And in the book of Isaiah, they refer to him as king of Egypt and all the world. This is their prophets saying that this man is king of Egypt and all the world. And for the Israelites to stand down because he's going to save the Israelites from the Assyrians. And that's him. Look like any young brother walking around Chi-Town, walking around L.A., walking around Frisco or Alabama or South Carolina or even Harlem. It's another statue of Tahaka. This is one of his sphinx. And this is Pharaoh Tenwet-Tumani. He's the last pharaoh of the 25th dynasty. They broke up his brother's nose too, but the lips still tell the story. He looked like my old friend Isham Jabba. And I don't want to make no fuss about it. I don't want to get in no trouble with my brothers now, because I don't know. This don't look, he ain't no more, but he got on a fez.
Yeah.
So I thought I'd drop him up in there with his fez.
Yeah,
He come up out of the Sudan. He don't know nothing about no Islam. Islam ain't born yet.
Right. He looked like Melchizedek that
Hey.
was out there on the 125th on Sundays.
Tanwet Tamani, the last ruler of the 25th dynasty. Then we get Semitek, first pharaoh of the 26th dynasty, shows some Egyptian soldiers. But this I wanted to get in. How many people have seen Bohan? Of course, this is the reproduction based on the history that has been left. Bohan is a fortress at Aswan, Egypt, 1700 BC. Now, you ever seen anything like that? No. There ain't no castles in England yet, people. All right? So this is the fortress at where Aswan is today, 1700 BC. The ancient Nubian kingdom of Kush, 1500 BC to 4 BC, and what we call the Sudan today. I'm standing. No, I'll take my shoes off because I'm doing all this standing and moving about. I'm not young like y'all no more. I just wanted to put this information on record. Now remember, all of this stuff I'm saying, you can see there's so much work to be done. Any one of these figures you can do research on. You can study and learn so much. I just want to give you the pantheon so you can see who we are through thousands of years. And the other folks is not even on the scene yet. A Nubian head in Sudan. Don't get no blacker than that, with the same locks. This locks thing that we tried to claim our brothers in Jamaica. You didn't invent the locks, brothers. You brought it from Africa with you. It was the hairstyle of the priest and the priestess. Pyramids of Nubia. Now, Kemet have about, I think, 134 or something like that of these pyramids. Sudan, though they have much smaller ones, they have close to 290-something or 300 of them. So there's much more of these in Sudan. And this is part of what some of the necropolis looks like there. This Jebel Barkel, a temple at Karma in Sudan. And what's significant? Remember the two temples. Remember these two pillars. And you will see these two pillars in front of every temple. They're significant because you do not go into any Masonic lodge except you walk between the two temples. And they have specific names for them. Again, this is Pyramids of Nubia, of which there are 223. Okay, that's the right number. This is up there just to give an artist rendition of what our people looked like back then. Meroitic Sudan, 1st, 2nd centuries AD. You had the Meroitic warrior, you have the Sudanese tribal warrior, and you have the Meroitic ladies. Meru was one of the great kingdoms there. Sudan is a very big place, and these are some of the pyramids that still exist in Sudan today. And like I said, I'll be in Sudan this summer, God and the ancestors willing, and I'll have a chance to visit Karma and the great mountain Jebel and Meru to kind of look at some of this for myself. I'd like to start writing my book on spirituality in the fall, but I've got to go to some places before I start that journey. And so this summer I should spend some time in the Congo, some time in Angola, sometime in Sudan, Kemet, Ghana. Then I'll come back home. So let's just hope all of that works out. Some of your little dockets can help me out today buying those plane tickets. And Nubian king of Kush on the temple wall in Meroe, Sudan. So you see he's wearing his locks, you know. You see he's sitting on a throne that is the lion, you know. You see he's writing in a writing system that is the same as a glyph. You see he's clearly an African. And this is in Sudan, not Kemet. The ancient African Aksum kingdom becomes important. This is what's now called Ethiopia today. But this kingdom is existing during the same time that Kemet is existing. And there's some extraordinary things about this king. We know about this lady through history. This is a facsimile of her, because nobody really had a sculptor of her. This is supposed to be a Queen Makeda, or the Queen of Sheba. This is the ruins of the Queen of Sheba Palace in Aksum, Ethiopia. But the Kanzaki queens, those who ruled, live in this palace. It's a massive complex. I was there once about 10 years ago, and I'm sure there's much more work has been done than what we see in this picture in excavating the site. This is another pictorial representation of the Queen of Sheba, or the Queen of Ethiopia, during the period of time when the Hebrews say they existed. Why would a lady with all this wealth need to go up and lay and hoe around with some little desert cat trying to get some sheep to function in the desert called Solomon is beyond me, but that's the mythology they've created to tie themselves to African history and to give some credibility to them as a people. This is the alleged home of the Ark of the Covenant. You know, they talk about this Ark of the Covenant, but nobody can produce it. And the only people in the world that got the testicles to say they got it is the Ethiopians. And they said it's in this complex, which is inside of an electric fence, and guards with AK-47 guards this thing. So you can't get in there, so I can't tell you whether they got it or not. They claim it was brought back there by the son of Solomon and Makeda. This is another shot of the temple and of one of their churches. This is the obelisk and ruin. These are tekens in Ethiopia. And this teken are taller than any of the ones in Kemet. What's weird about this, you see these little spots on these tekens? What are they?
I don't know.
They're windows. It's a skyscraper. They're windows. All of these little windows, right? And then at the bottom there's a door. I've been there. I've touched it. And I'm going like, whoa. They had this concept of a multi-level building, door and windows. I said, and that's deep. We need to really get into that. But they have a lot of tekens there. They don't have the pointed style of the pyramid on the top. They're round at the top. This is a Hebrew sister in Ethiopia. This is what they look like there. This is an ancient castle at Gondor. When these are built, there's no castle in England. There's no castle in France. There's no castle in Italy. Ancient Kingdom of Zimbabwe, I'm showing because in order to build, again, look at this. This is impeccable masonry work. They're brick masons. They're scientists. They're people who are putting these complexes together with the skills which we are told comes out of Europe with the European Freemason. And while these are being built, there's no Freemasonry in European, there's no cathedrals in European, there's no castles in Europe. So that does that. Ancient Kingdom of Zimbabwe, there's no Europe yet. Look at this magnificent wall that makes up this magnificent city. There's no cement holding those rocks together. They're fashioned to fit in place by the Freemasons of their day. Here's another close shot at those rocks. No, there's no cement. Cement hadn't been invented yet. It's just the skills, the knowledge. This is another shot of just different scenes of the different complexes. This is in Great Zimbabwe, which spread for tens and tens of miles. This is an artist's rendition of what one of those complexes would look like, with the different houses for storage of grain, where workers sleep, where the owners slept, where the corral where the animals was in, how you got up on the wall to guard and protect the compound. I got this from Brother Reggie. I've been reading this book, still reading this book. But I saw a piece on television, the History Channel, where they were looking at these complexes in South Africa. There are thousands of them, but that cracker under apartheid wouldn't let the world have access to none of this information. Brother Reggie turned me on to this book, and he sent me this book through the computer, Temple of the African Gods. And I put this up there because there's something else he pointed out to me that just blew my mind, and it still blows my mind. It's an Ankh life carved in the center of a carving of the sun, Ra, in a volcanic rock of South Africa, thousands of years before the first dynasty Kemet. There it is. The Ankh and Ra. That's deep. That wipes out almost everything. As Reggie said, this changed the trajectory of all of what we ever thought was history. But I'm not here to go into detail. I just wanted to show you how black we are, how deep we are, how old we are, how much before any of this other stuff we have been and we still are. Then we get hit with another invasion. 552 BC to 44 BC, it's the Persians. Now these are some black folks from the east. Okay, this is Darius, king of Persia. They never tell you he's black. You have to look at the statues to see he's black, and he's got nappy hair. You know, and at that time when he invades, there's Amtios, Pharaoh 28th dynasty, 404 BC. And then there's the 30th dynasty. This is the last of the African dynasty. And after this, after the Persian invasion, we're in trouble because they'll be followed by the Greeks, then by the Romans, then by the Arabs, and we never really get Kemet back again. The closer we have to giving somebody on the throne that is a true Kemetian blood would be the brother Abdul Nasser and Majib, I think, who was working with him, and the brother they assassinated, the president of Egypt who was assassinated. They were Nubians, and they came to the throne, but they were the first in centuries. This is the gold mask from the 30th dynasty. Then we get the second Persian invasion. Those brothers managed to drive the Persians out, but the Persians will come back again. And the second invasion in 343 and 332 BC. But what I wanted to show is what the Persians looked like. They were black at that time. And they painted themselves as such with nappy hair. And this is an ancient glazed brick art, make up the Babylonian procession wall, which leads to the gates of Ishtar, which are on display at the Pergamon Museum in Germany.
Who's that on the right? Who's that?
This is Xerxes. This is the palace of Xerxes. This is one of their king. You can see that they're still African. This is the Persians.
I'm showing you the umbrella too.
Yeah, and the umbrella is still a part of African tradition to this day. But look at the wasp that the Yoruba use, that he's waving over the king's head. So this.
Got on feds too.
I swear he got on the feds. You know. So this is a black culture that invades Kemet from the east. Of course, they will later be invaded. This is the close-up of that picture of the Persian archers, and let you know, are they black enough for you? You know. And so, again, this is Darius of Persia. These are indigenous Iranians. These are the indigenous. These are the Aborigines. These are black folks serving in the Iranian army today who are Iranians. They're not imported there. You know, and I remember the first time, I think was me and Reggie together. We were coming through, I don't know if the Reggie was with me. I was bringing a group from Dr. Ben. We were coming back through Jordan. And there was this beautiful blue-black sister serving us. So me and some of the brothers, I think me and Brother X, some of the others, be arguing about, is she from Nigeria? Is she from Ghana? Is she from Mali? So I was being the brave one. I go and ask her, she said, no, I'm Jordanian. I was like, no, I want to know where your ancestors from. She says, we are the Jordanian. My ancestors is the Jordanians. And when we got to the hotel, when she got off, she came and had dinner with us and told us more about the history of the original Jordanian, who was black blue people. And that flipped my mind into a whole turnaround on things. And then comes the Greek in 332 BC. And you can see, you know, they come out of Macedonia, north of Greece. And this is under this general Alexander, and he conquers this area, and he's eventually murdered over here, and by his generals, after he killed his half brother, who was a black dude, who was his bodyguard. He killed the only man that was keeping him alive from the white boys. And so after he kills his brother, he's murdered, and then his wife, who's an Egyptian woman, and his son is then murdered. They don't talk about that much in history, but it's something that we need to know to understand how they behave. Now, this is their Parthenon. Now, tell me, does this even compete with all of the pillar temples that you've seen? Does it even come close?
No.
You know?
No.
This is ridiculous that this has been posited to the world. And now you see what a white man looks like. Philip of Macedonia, the father of Alexander, so-called the Great. This is Alexander, the so-called Great of Greece, who carried out the murder and the genocide of people in Kemet and East Africa, right into what is now almost at the borders of India, before he was murdered by his own generals for their greed and envy and jealousy. Another statue of him. And this shows, the extent of the Ptolemaic kingdom. His general, Ptolemy, then when he's dead, one of his main generals take this part of his kingdom. Other generals take this part, and other generals, took this part. They said, kill him, let's divide up the spoils. And so this Ptolemy, he would rule Kemet, not the entire Kemet, parts of Kemet. And his children, one of his great-great-children, or great-granddaughter, we'll get to it in a minute, but this is the Canaanite god El. He's wearing the Egyptian crown. So if your God is wearing the crown of Kemet, then you must be of Kemet. But if you look at El, you can see he's an African. His nose goes from here to here. And another side, this is the god of the Canaanite, right? But this is a Canaanite woman. Is she black enough for you? And they didn't call themselves Moors either. Even though the brother got on affairs, that's God. That's hell. I dropped this one because I was trying to find some images of the Philistine. And so the carving of a Philistine warrior was found among the ruins at Thebes, Egypt. It dates back to 1200 BC. So that's the best one I could find. But it was clear enough to see that he's African. He's wearing his locks up, but he's an African man. Then we get back to the white man. The nose tell the story. Yeah. The nose tell the story. Yeah. This is the Ptolemy. This is the general. This is the facsimile of the general, one of Alexander's general, who takes over northern Kemet. And this is either one of his great-great-granddaughters. But by this time, since Kemet is not being fed by more whites from Greeks in a large enough number, they marry into the black family, and the family becomes black again. So by the time we get to Cleopatra, who's at the time of the Roman Empire, Cleopatra is a title, not a name. And so this is the Cleopatra that we're talking about when we're talking about the invasion of the Romans. And so she comes from that bloodline of the Ptolemy, but also the bloodline of the black women he was raping and called his wives. And you see this happen if you go to Ghana, to a place called Anamabu. You'll get to something called Brew House, where they ran the big slave trade out of. When they privatized the slave trade, this cat named Brew married the daughter of the king. But then as time went on, the family went from being almost white back to being jet black and black. And we sat with, his great-great-great-granddaughter and so forth over there, who was a black woman with her black children. And the same thing occurred here in Kemet. They went from the Ptolemy and the white skin, from the rapers and the invaders, back to the black folks. And you can see she's a black woman. I have two other statues of her. This is the Cleopatra of the time of the Roman invasion. This is Mark Antony, the Roman general that supposedly had this relationship with Cleopatra when Cleopatra and him supposedly committed suicide in the play written by Shakespeare. So what this is all about, this is the Roman Empire in red, and this is about money. Okay? This is about controlling trade routes. They're not invading Kim because they just want to go hang out. They see these people got technology. These people have gold. These people have linen. These people have cotton. These people have wheat. These people have barley. We need that to run an empire to feed our armies we're sending around the world. So that's the necessity for invading. So invasion is not just about taking over some place. Invasion is getting access to the Silk Route to get into China, getting access to India so you can get access to the myrrh and the spices and other things to preserve meat, access to salt. That's what this war is all about. And this is the Roman Empire at a particular time in history. You can see they conquered what was called to them the known world and the northern part of Africa. So out of this will come the word more. It is out, Latin doesn't develop in Europe, Latin develops here in North Africa. It's really a North Africa innovative language, not a European language, but they've taken it as theirs. But as any linguistic would show, Greek and Rome, all those languages will emanate out of the Kemetic language system, including the Hebrew, Again, this shows you what they were fighting about. The Roman Empire at AD 200, now they've taken over northern Kemet, they've taken over the Mediterranean basin in southern Europe, and what they're trying to get access to is the grain, marble, metals, olive oil, textile, timber, wild animals, and wine. That's what they're invading us for. Just as that same reason they're invading Africa today. Nothing has changed, okay, except our minds. And if we put our minds back to where it should be, we'll have another world. Constantine, Emperor of Rome, who started Christianity. That's what he looks like according to him. So that's the devil. This is the Hagia Sophia, the first great church of Christianity, the Eastern Orthodox Church, the senior church of the Byzantine Empire. Remember, Byzantine was the Eastern Roman Empire after the Germans destroyed Rome and took over Italy. And so here's another shot of the Hagia Sophia. After it was taken over by the Muslims, they built these minarets. Today it's a museum. This is the Church of the Holy Sepulchre built by Rome in so-called Israel or Palestine, on a spot that the mother of Constantine claimed she found the tomb of Jesus. So Constantine comes in and builds this little temple. They built this bigger one over it since. This is the inside of that temple. I just thought I'd drop that in because we're moving through a kind of a timeline. This is an Ethiopian icon of Christ healing a blind man. So even back then, before there's any church in Europe, Ethiopians saw Christ as a black man. This is the St. Mary of Zion Church, the oldest church in Ethiopia. This is another 5th century Byzantine church found in Ethiopia. There is no Protestant church anywhere in Europe at this time. The Catholic Church has made their way into Europe and just beginning to become dominant. But there's no Martin Luther yet. I don't think the 5th century Catholic Church hasn't come into being yet. They would come into church being another for almost 500 years. This Christian church in Ethiopia, this Christianity is older than the Christianity in Western Europe and England. Of course, the Church of St. George's, again, masonry work. This kind of sculpting and masonry art and craft you won't find anywhere else in the world. Looking at it from up above, how they carved that out of that one big solid piece of rock, and they did 11 others. This is a priest of the early Christian church, Beth Galathea and Lalibela, Ethiopia, Africa, carrying the cross that would become the cross of the Knights Templars. This cross. And we will see it in a few minutes. This is a church of the granite column, Old Angola, Sudan, East Africa in 10th century. Okay, another church in Sudan, 11th century. Europe ain't got no cathedrals yet. Now, I show these to show that you're talking about brick masons. You're talking about architects. You're talking about mathematics and geometry is already at play in order to build all of this. And the same thing at this enormous cathedral, which they're just excavating. You can see you're talking about masonry, you're talking about trigonometry, you're talking about geometry and other sciences that's employed in building this enormous stone temple. Eastern Orthodox Cathedral in Bulgaria, I just dropped that in to show that the Eastern Orthodox Church preceded the Catholic Church as a dominant instrument in Christianity. I'm going to go right past these Catholic folks, but here. The crowns of the black Egyptian pharaoh worn by the Pope.
Look at that.
The black Madonnas in Barcelona and in Mexico. The Pope, John Paul, and at Our Lady of Zar and Veneza, St. Nicholas Church in Kiev, Ukraine. Pope Benedict, 16, blessing the crowd at a shrine of Our Lady of Czestochowa in Poland. Pope praying at the Black Madonna in the Vatican. Pope, the new Pope and the one that was leaving because he didn't want to get knocked off, so he said, I'm going to give this stuff up. Y'all take it. Praying at the Black Madonna in the basement at the Vatican. There he is, Pope Francis, being received his Black Madonna, saying, okay, we've been talking the trick, but here's the real deal, so you got to know what's up. So, there's the Black Madonna in Lorraine, Italy, being carried through the streets by the white folks right now, and they do this every year. And the black folks carrying the Black Madonna in Spain, while the black folks in Congo is confused and got some white Madonna carrying it about. St. Peter, in the Vatican, is black, and there's a statue of St. Paul in the Vatican. I already went through that. This one was someone sent to me over the internet, and I thought it was apropos to show here Christ in his arm raised. He's going to the ascension. He has an angel on either side, and you can see where it's coming from. Here's the life force being raised up to the heavens of Ra, and has his two angels on either side. So they just took our stuff. This is Isis, because she has the stool. I can't see quite who this is. It may be Het Haru. On the things, like I'm not a master of Kemetic history, so I will make some errors. Y'all go clean it up. Y'all get your books, do the research. This one someone else sent on the internet, and I love this one. This is Akhenaten, and he's dealing with the divine, which is the Aton, with all of the hands of the divine, what we call God coming down to touch him, and he's making offerings, making prayer to him. And here's the Christian version of it, right? Look at this. The hands of the divine coming down, and he's on his knees, and he's making prayers to it. So they take stuff right out of our history and make symbols for themselves. Of course, we talk about then and now, ancient Kemet, ancient Ethiopia, and Europe. And then we move, this is the beginning of it all, ancient Kemet. Now this is a concept of black woman and child. This is not a particular human being. We call her Aset, but Aset is prototypical of all femininity, of all female motherhood. And Haru is atypical of all life form that come from that mother. He represents tomorrow. But then that's the theological discussion that could take all day. Again, the original, and as it's displayed once the Christian motif in Ethiopia comes into place, and looking at again the oldest and the most original, and looking at how do we get from that to this. Because this is what we're looking at now, and worshiping, not as a symbol of anything, but we think that's the real mama of God, and that real little white baby there is God. And of course I showed this in another piece that I did, but this is an 18th century tradition. Here's Aset and Haru, and this is the Sed festival they're celebrating in Kemet, while Moses, Mary, and Jesus is coming into Kemet. And so the artists, the European artists, have painted the people of Kemet, the ruling elite, as white, and the slaves as blacks. And so what he's saying in this 18th century thing, we're taking your shit from you. We see you celebrating yourself, but we're now coming in to be that which will be celebrated by you. And that's a deep concept right there. This is Heru, son of God, born of Immaculate Conception, is symbolized by the falcon, as the modern Christ is symbolized by the dove. Someone sent this piece to me on the internet too, and I thought that would be nice just to show the symmetry there, how somebody can take your stuff and then give it back to you. When you don't know about your stuff, you think this is their stuff. I'm not going to go deep into this because my brain is tired now. But when we look at what's really going on, you're looking at, I can't see, is that the winter? This is the winter solstice. This is the autumn equinox. This is the summer solstice. And I think this must be the fall equinox. And what we are seeing when we see this discussion about Christ, and right now we come into the discussion of Passover, and what we're seeing is it's a discussion of the solar drama. It's a discussion of the solar drama. This is the sun, okay? And these are the 12 months. But it also symbolized one object moving around the sun in these 12 positions. And so I talk about the 4 children of Horus representing the 4 seasons, the 4 directions, and the 4 elements. But let's take it to this next level. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. I wanted to just show some of the religious stuff, but this is the goddess Nun, the concept of Nun, the primary waters out of which all things come. We're talking about the original 12 disciples. We could do that in another time. I wanted to get to this picture. Here's their concept of Christ, which has the light around his head. He represents Ra. He represents the sun, which is emanating as his mind. And if you look at them, these are the 12 objects evolving around the sun. Okay? You got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Not only do you have the 12 objects floating around the sun, they're in sets of 3. 1 set of 3, 2 set of 3, 4 set of 3, 3 set of 3, 4 set of 3. So you got the 4 seasons and the 12 months evolving around the sun. So they're using the whole concept of Christ to tell the same solar drama that we were telling in Kemet in trying to explain cosmology to ourselves. So we thinking they're just stupid and out there worshiping some dude. No, they're functioning within the context of your ancient science to build their communities, their organizations, and their lives to rule the world while they have you at the primitive level thinking you're talking about a discussion about men, and you're not. Osir of Egypt, the world's first risen savior, and the Tekken. Look at this beautiful Tekken. But look at Osir. You don't get no black. Asar. So you don't get no blacker than that. Look at that. I mean, straight up. Brother could be on 125th Street right now selling tapes and stuff. How do you miss this? But I just wanted to show you how black all of this stuff was. In the book of the coming forth, I'm not going to spend time on it. 12, you have the priest, the God, and the 12 jurors. You have the laws, you have the justice system, Lady Justice, you have the person coming for justice, you have the person defending that person, you have the person prosecuting that person, you got the person keeping the record in the court, you got the person being the bailiff taking them before the judge. That's the American legal system on one page of one of our books. That's deep. And I didn't touch nothing. But just to show you how they take your black stuff and do other things with it. Then we run into the Islamic world. Islamic world, Muhammad came in 622 to 632. The territory, and these are the territories here that he had conquered. This is the territory that was added by the caliphs following him, what they call the four rightful caliph. And then this is the territory added by the Umayyads, who then would take over the kingdom. The Umayyads once ran all of this, but there was a black rebellion called the Rebellion of the Zanj in the Persian Gulf that actually overthrew them in the 800s, and so they end up in North Africa and Spain, and the rest of these people are controlled by a group called the Abbas, which will be in the rulership of Islam in that area until this day, at least until the First World War, when the British and the Americans and the French would take over that area, overthrow the Turks, and then put the people in Saudi Arabia and Jordan and those places in place who are not the people at all. They're the biggest joke in the world. And I was a good Muslim until I found out what big a joke there was when I went to Mecca, you know. Anyway, here are the 3 ways we pray in Islam, you know. And then you go into Sajda. Then you sit and you pray. You even greet the angels on either side. Those are the 3 major postures in Islam. What is interesting, there are 3 major postures now we prayed in Kemet. There it is, there it is, there it is. Go back. There it is, there it is, there it is. There it is, there it is, there it is. So
we've been doing that
you know,
long before they copied us, man.
Well, you'll see another piece. The original Arabs, yeah, they were black people. Arabs never had nothing to do with an ethnic group. It was just a label for people who lived in the sand. Of course, after we get invaded by the Greeks and the Romans and all those other white folks, they now live in the sand and they don't kick our butts out of the sand, you know. Another shot just showing the ethnic, how they paint in the early days, how ethnic Arabs were painted in literature. This is the Caliph Abu Bakr who fought painting, following Muhammad. He took over, he didn't live very long, he died. But this is Mecca. And I've been here. I've marched around this thing. I kissed the black stone twice, the whole nine. This is called the Kaaba. What is the Ka?
Spirit,
What is the Ba?
the soul.
When they come together, they form what? The house or the temple of the divine. What is this called? Beitul Allah, the house of God. The Kaaba, the soul, the spirit, is the house of God. And Kemet, the Ka and the Ba, form the temple of the divine. So here's your system, your tradition, at least aspects of it, taken by other people and used to develop and organize and strengthen themselves. Caliph Omar, who was the one in power when the Arab armies invaded Kemet to remove the Roman armies.
How many more slides you got?
We can get to 30 minutes?
Yeah, I'm gonna catch the bank before they close.
Oh, what time is the bank?
I think it closes about 4:30 or maybe 5. The ladies, I don't know.
We'll be finished at 4. Yeah, they open until 5. We'll be finished by 4. I'm going to speed it up. But I just wanted to show the Arab people, have known, here's the people who we call the Moors of Spain. They're just the black folks that was in Spain. When the Romans were there, dominating their lives, and the Arabs came in and said, look, they brought actually a contract and said, if y'all willing to go along with this contract, we'll throw these dudes out of power. We won't even leave no armies on you. Agree to the contract. All you do is send us a certain amount of barley, certain amount of wheat, certain amount of gold every year. We'll leave some teachers there to teach you Islam. We're going to keep it moving. Black folks say, you straight? They say, yeah, and we'll help you crush the Romans. They bought that piece, and so that's how the power in North Africa came in their hand under Islam. So why wouldn't they move with Islam? Because it became the liberating instrument for them. Oops. Yeah. Another Moors, this is a modern-day sister from that area. These are paintings of brothers from that area. Again, the Kaaba and the black stone in the corner of the Kaaba. And I've been through all this. This is the Arch of Abraham. I prayed in there and did the march around. Down in the grounds, the well of Zamzam. I went down there, and I even kissed the stone. Yes, sir. I went to all. I prayed all up in here, prayed up in here. Got so angry one day, got a mop and a bucket of water and said, y'all filthy. And I started mopping the place, me and Malcolm's nephew Rod now. By the second day, we had everybody mopping. They brought the soldiers, police on us the first day. After that, they said, they must have something. We're going to start mopping too. This is Uthman, who will be the guy who's the nephew of the dude who was trying to kill Prophet Muhammad. So they pull a coup. He takes over by killing the guy named Omar, and he becomes the leader. And they built this complex. They began the building of this complex. This is the second holiest place in Islam. This is Medina, an extraordinary mosque outside of Mecca. This is Ali. This is the Prophet's cousin. Now, the guy, Uthman, is married to one of the Prophet's daughter, but he's not a Prophet blood relative. This is the Prophet blood relative who was also married to one of the Prophet's daughter. So he tries to oust Uthman, kills Uthman, him and his boys, because he said Uthman is taken into a mercantilistic thing, and this is a spiritual thing. Of course, Uthman's cousin, Muawiyah, would come down for Syria and kill him. Then they would go on, the people who call themselves the Sunnis would go on to kill not only the Prophet's nephew or cousin, but all of his grandchildren and great-grandchildren. All right? And so their family gets given refuge by the Persians, who said, we'll give you refuge, but you got to let us become the spiritual leaders. That develops the concept of the mullahs and start the process we know as Shia Islam today. But I won't even go into the history of that, because that's deep. That gets real deep. This is the Byzantine Empire, the Christian Roman Empire that was ruling North Africa before the Muslims came in. Again, just the Muslims. So that they've been into the whole Islamic thing, has been into the whole slave thing for a long time, but we are not going to go through that. I just want to drop down. This is one of the biggest slave rebellions in the history of the world, called the Rebellion of the Zanj, in Iraq, where Kuwait and Iraq meet in 869. We need to study this because this overthrows the Umayyad dynasty and ushers in the Abbas dynasty and changes Islam forever. You had the Mamluk Turks come in first, then the Seljuk Turks come in, then the Ottoman Turks come in, then the crusade starts, and the European rolls up in there with his crusades. We're not going to go into the details of that, but you can study this. You had the first crusade in 1096 to 1099, Robert of Flanders, Raymond of Toulouse, Godfrey of Bouillon, and Bohemond of Taranto. Then you had the third crusade, which comes in 1189, 1192. That's Frederick the Barbarossa of Germany, Philip Augustus of France, and Richard the Lionheart of England. Now, what they leave off of here is the Second Crusade, which was the Children's Crusade, where cracker got real crazy, and they sent their children to war. Most of them died or was captured or was killed, but never really made it over there. So these people go in, and so the First Crusade took Christianity. It took them like 3 years to reach Jerusalem, and they got up in Jerusalem, and I'm just going to forget about those. This is the insignia of the Knights Templars. Now we're going to get into the Masonic piece. This is the Knights Templars insignia. This is the Knights Templars, how they dress. And this is their cross they carry as their emblem. The replica built in Holland of the Knights Templars temple that they had built in Jerusalem. So you can go to Holland and see this temple today. It is the Knights Templars who would take what we know as Freemasonry back to Western Europe. Now, the Knights Templars were sent over there by the European kings to guard the pilgrims who was going to Jerusalem while they had control of Jerusalem. And then there's another group called the Knights Hospitallers, Les Hospitalos de Saint Jean, the Knights of St. John. They're now today called the Knights of Malta, and they still function like an army and a nation out of the nation of Malta. They were sent in to build hospitals for the Knights Templars, but when the Knights Templars returned to Europe with their Freemasonry and their secret organization, and they move away from the Catholic Church dominance, and they began to display their great wealth to buy land and take control in Europe, Europe called in this army, the army of France, the army of the Vatican, and the Knights Hospitallers, and they were the ones that destroyed and assassinated much of the leadership of the Knights Templars, many of whom did escape from France and Italy and into England and began the movement that we know today as Freemasonry. This is the Knights Hospitallers and their flag, and if you know today, these two black eagles reverse is one of the symbols of Freemasonry. This is the coat of arms of the Knights Hospitallers. This is the insignia of the Knights of Malta. The Knights Hospitallers have become the Knights of Malta. So this is a replica of the ancient city of Jerusalem. So you'll get a chance to see this and study it. So I'll just give you a second on it, then I'll move on. This is an illustration of the Temple of Solomon. Now we get way up here to a Temple of Solomon, who the Masons say they worship, when none of this stuff exists when I showed you all of those magnificent temples that we built. But if you look, the same two pillars I told you that's in front of every Egyptian temple is there in front of this temple. Then you're talking about the Knights Templars made their headquarters in the ruins of the Temple of Solomon, the Knights Templars initiation ceremony. Then you got the first Temple of Solomon destroyed by Babylon, but again, Joachim and the other pillar. Okay? This is the working tools of the craft of Freemasonry. Remember these tools because these are the symbols all over the world. Remember them because they become important. This is the second Temple of Solomon destroyed by the Romans. Again, the two pillars. Okay? Then Richard the Lionheart, the King of England, this is the Third Crusade. They come in 1186 and they kick butt, right? Look at old Richard. They paid him to look dynamic. But then this boy had just rose up out of the dust. A dude named Salahuddin, whose family is African, Arab mixture, and Eastern European Slav. And he wipes their butt out. And July the 4th, ironic, they took that as their holiday for America independence. Saladin wins the Battle of Hattin. And Saladin destroyed the Frankish nobles, that's the German, the Templars and the Hospitallers, and assumed control over Jerusalem. The Templars, Hospitallers, and the Frankish nobles seek refuge on the island of Cyprus. The Knights Templars ring. Statue of Saladin near the citadel in Jerusalem. And this is the third holiest site in Islam, the Al-Azhar shrine of the Dome of the Rock, the place where Prophet Muhammad is supposed to have ascended into heaven alive and come back. And when he got up to heaven, he said he heard the footstep of the black man Bilal before him. That's some deep stuff right there in Islam. If I'm the prophet, I'm the Mac of the Mac, your man. But when I got to heaven, this black dude who called the prayers ahead of me going before God, that's saying something in their own literature. But most people won't tell you about that acronym. This is a look at the rock in the Dome of the Rock that he was supposed to have ascended into heaven from. That's it from a long term. This whole thing is supposed to represent the mount on which the Temple of Solomon once stood right here. And around this is what they're calling the Wailing Wall. we don't have to go. This is looking at just now. That's of course the pyramid text. We're not going to go. We've been through that. So our great holy books. We got the books of Gates. We have the disciples. We got all of our deities. I just wanted to show you that we never painted our deity white. We painted all our deity black. Amun's black. This is a replica, but this is of Ma'at, but she's black. This is my boy Ptah. He's black. There he goes again. Is that black enough for you with his afro? You know, so we painted our gods black. You saw that we were all black who were the rulers, but we saw our gods as black. And you know, this is the netta for boundless, talking about one of the qualities and attributes of the divinity. This is the netta for darkness, talking about the dense deepness in which all things come forth. The gods of order. This is Shu, represent light. This is Tefnut, represent moisture and heat. And this is that's
that's right.
Yeah, it depends on what symbol they have on them. So that's Tefnut, and that profound. This is it again here. You can see a better version of it. So this is Shu holding up Nut, this is earth. This is the cosmos, and this is the air and the gases and the moisture in between. So we are talking about an ecological and a cosmological drama being described by these paintings. So in the beginning, out of the waters of Nun, comes Ra. And then Ra gives birth to Shu and Tefnut. He spits it out. He coughs up Shu and he spits out Tefnut. Tefnut and Shu mate, and they produce Geb and Nut. They're twins. Geb and Nut will mate, and they will produce Asar, Set, Isis, and Nephthys. Okay? So when you really get into all of this, it gets deep. But I don't want to go into the cosmology. You need to go into it. I've set it up there. That's the simplest formula I ever see it in to study it. Nut in the sky goddess, I was just trying to show a different rendition. I thought this was important because it was saying that the earth mated with the sky to produce humans. Now that's deep, and we need to study that, how light and energy mating with minerals produce the human being, because it'd be right on point. Say that our gods, we still seeing our God as black as us. Is that black enough for you? You know, our Set and Heru, is that black enough for you? We talking about his brother Set, and this Nephthys, the wife of Set. So we saw ourselves and all of our deity as black. So I'm going to go to some of this because I want to get closer because the time is getting short. These are just the very deities of Kemet. And this is the science that we call astrology. We invented it, we created it. Orion, or Sehu, as he was called by the Egyptian on the astronomical ceiling of the outer hypostyle hall of the temple of Hathor at Dendera. Astrology in Africa before Greece, before Rome, before Persia, astrology in Africa. God Assad, the first risen savior and the God of the underworld, black as black can be. We had no problem in knowing who we were, and we had no problem in knowing how we would represent our divinity. Not only did we represent him as the black as black, but we had him sitting on the square. That becomes important. Remember that square as we're going to move quicker. Here's the pharaoh, black as black, but sitting on the square. If you know anything about Masonry, everything is done on the square. So the symbol of the goddess Ma'at, the concept of truth, justice, righteousness, harmony, balance, and reciprocity. And then we get to the replica of the Tekken in Washington, D.C., called the Washington Masonic Monument. It's beautiful. Those folks, the white folks, can do some stuff with the technology they took from us. And here's the Tekken represented in the Book of the Coming Forth by Day. The Tekken on the page of the Book of the Coming Forth by Day and Night, the Purim Haru, the Egyptian Book of the Dead. So this is here long before there's a Washington. This is a Tekken in the Vatican Square in front of St. Peter's Basilica, taken from Luxor, Egypt. This is a Tekken in Paris, France, taken from Luxor, Egypt in the 1800s. This is a Tekken in Central Park, New York, taken from Alexandria, Egypt in the 1800s. Yep. Another shot of the one behind the Museum of Natural that's the Metropolitan Museum of Art. Washington, D.C. Okay. There, their pillar temple on the lake, and there they have the Tekken reflecting in the lake. Tell me where it came from.
Look at that.
Where did it come from?
Right.
Where did they get this from? Where did they get it from? Look at that. Our Tekkens, our temple. Where did it come from? Our Tekken, our temples you know. So when somebody take your stuff, if you don't know your stuff, you think this is their stuff, and they can teach you something, but you just taught them something. So, again, the tools of the craft found in ancient Egypt. These are all the tools of Freemasonry. This is the Scottish Rite Temple in Washington, D.C. Again, a pillar temple, and it got Sphinx standing outside the door. When you walk inside, you're going to see all of Kemet. So this is the George Washington Masonic Memorial in Washington, D.C. They've got the pillar temple, they got the pyramid, and they got the Tekenu. And you go inside, Washington is standing in the Holy of Holies in the pillar temple, just like the ones I was showing you early on in Kemet. And you go into the Grand Lodge of Pennsylvania at Philadelphia, and there it is, a pillar temple. And you'll see when I show you another piece, the Holy of Holies, that's where the worshipful master stands. This is the shrine where all the rites are done, and on either side of him is this junior deacon and senior deacon. This is the Australian Royal Arch Temple in Petersham, New South Wales. They ain't even tried to hide it. They tell you we're imitating Egypt. Look at it.
Yep.
They make no bones about it. This is a replica. Look.
And there were them pillars, look.
Look above the door. The wing orb. There's the two pillows. And you got the wing orb. You know, you got Ra on the disc. You got the three pyramids. They're very clear. They're not trying to hide it. The temple column with the lotus design. There's no Greece, there's no Rome yet when we designed this temple column. So in Masonry, they talk about the Ionian and Dorian columns that make up the strength of Masonry. They don't exist yet. These African columns existed before Greece or Rome or England. The temple of the island of Philae in Egypt. The temples at Abydos. This is what it looks like today. This is what it would look like if we were to restore the paint on it as it was back in the day. This is how it looked when Napoleon got there. Drawing from the Napoleonic expedition in Egypt of the great temple of the Isle of Philae. Again, these are the brothers using all the tools of Freemasonry, and they're building, as they're building and they're working in the temples. This is the Grand Lodge at Waset, Luxor, Egypt, and this becomes important. You see the Tekenu in front. The other Tekenu that was here, I think that's the one that's either in France or in Vatican. This is the temple when you look at it all in one piece. Look at the giganticness of this. That's 1, 2, 3, 4. That's about 5 or 6 city blocks in length. It is an enormous facility. You can take that Parthenon in Greece and stack it up here 10 or 15 times, and it still will not be as big as just this aspect of the temple. This was not a temple for worship. This was a university. Each section represents the learning of a different set of science and arts and technology and mathematics, etc. All the 7 liberal arts was taught between this temple and the great temple a mile down the road at Luxor. Another shot of the great temple, the inner sanctum of the great temple. This is Hathor Temple in Dendera, Egypt, before there's a Greece or Rome. And again, we got the 2 pillars. It's very important to understand those 2 pillars. We already looked at that. And so now we come into some of the things of Freemasonry. And so this is called the Royal Arch. When we look at what is in the sky, when we think of the Royal Arch, think of the sky. The eastern horizon and the western horizon represent an arch over the earth. As above, so below, the heavenly royal arch. This woman's body represents the heavens. That is the royal arch. This is Shu, and this is Geb. This is Kanun. Goddess Kanun, one of the creator deity, holding up the arms of Shu, one hand on her vagina, one hand on her breast. It is said that the goddess Nut swallows Ra at night and gives birth to Ra in the morning. But that's part of metaphor. We can really get into that. I just wanted to show you that the symbol of the arch that becomes the royal arch in Masonry is the symbol of the cosmos itself. And that's why in every Mason temple, you'll see the ceiling is painted with blue with stars to represent that. Again, another shot of it just to show. Oh, the reason I come to this because in architect, they'll tell you, you can see God sitting up there black as night. Architects will say that the arch was invented by the Arabs. So let's look at some arches in ancient Kemet. Arch, arch, arch. There is no Arabs yet. Arch, there is no Arab yet. This is the royal arch. The skills to create these arches. This arch. What degree is this? Remember the stance that these persons are in. That's the pyramid text, which is the oldest holy book in the world that we know. When you go to any Masonic temple, you've got to take oath to a spiritual book. It doesn't have to be the Bible, though most of them in this country use a Bible. I know when my son took his oath, he did it on the book of the coming forth by day and by night. You know, this God Kanum, creating God out of clay, out of mud, on his potter's wheel. And I just wanted to show the medical books, but we don't need to look at that. Now, geometry, at the center of Masonry is geometry. Most people don't know that. They call it Masonic geometry. And a lot of the work that you do is based on the science of geometry. And so let's look at the pages from the Orion Mathematic Papyrus. There is no Greece yet, there's no Rome yet, there's no Germany yet, there's no England yet, there's no America yet, and yet geometry already exists in the book form in writing in Kemet. Another shot of the same thing. Looking at the Moscow Mathematic Papyrus, and we're dealing with geometry, and we're dealing with other mathematical treaties that's existing when nothing in Europe exists yet. These are the foundation of what they today call Freemasonry. The all-seeing eye, which comes out to 99 and a half, I think. You know, so what is the missing piece? That's one of the big secrets, because these are all hieroglyphic mathematic symbols that's pulled together to make up this eye. Study it. Do the research. I'm presenting something before you. Look at it deeply. Arithmetic and geometry in ancient Egypt. This is the pyramid. And so we're looking at, and I can't even read when I have it here because it's too low, but we're looking at the geometric mathematical design that it would take to put into place what we call the pyramids. This is a symbol. If you see the blue lines around the head of the pharaoh, when you've put it in, you've created an upside-down star. That upside-down star is this upside-down star, the Eastern Star, the Order of Eastern Star in Freemasonry. So look at this geometric symbol. You see the Order of the Eastern Star. You see the 5-point star within the circle, the Order of the Eastern Star. And you'll see that they've taken that same concept to create the Eastern Star, which is the 5-pointed star pointed down. Over the doors of every Kemetic temple is this orb, the wing orb, in one form or another. And so we see the symbol for the Netta, God, and we see the symbol for life, among others. But they are the centerpiece of all of it. And this is a Masonic temple in England, and there it is over the door. This is the Masonic temple in Australia, and again you have the winged orb over the door. There you see there's the two pillows that I've been showing you all along is in every Masonic temple. Every temple you must enter through the door between those two pillows. I won't disrespect people by going into any secret stuff because I don't have. That'd be disrespectful to those brothers I've taken oath with that we will learn these things step by step. But these two pillars, you can actually find a lot of this stuff by going online, actually. And these two pillars are significant in every temple. It's part of what you must learn the science of them, the mathematic science of them, after you walk between them. Here's an ancient temple, the one that's in the museum downtown here in Manhattan. Again, you see the two pillars. And there at this temple ruin in Abu Sir in Kemet, the two pillars. Those two pillars are significant. There's the pharaoh sitting, the god, Assas, sitting on the square. This is a temple that is designed like any Masonic lodge, with the inner sanctum, the Holy of Holies, and then you have the attendant of the Grand Master on either side. Now, here again, you see the same thing. The Holy of Holies, they call it the Grand East. And in the Grand East sits the Grand Master. Then he has deacons, senior, junior deacon, junior warden, senior deacon, and junior deacons that are his aides. This is the best one I found of a shrine at which the works is done, and then the inner sanctum, and then space on the side for the two attendees of those who stand. This takes the cover off everything. This is the tomb of a Roman general who served in Egypt. There's no England yet. There's no France. There is no Freemasonry. There's no Scottish rites or royal arch. But look on the tomb of the Roman general who's buried after he's finished his service in Kemet. Here's all of the tools of Freemasonry. That just takes it out. That takes everything away from England right there. That takes everything away from Western Europe right there. This is Rome. This is the general of Rome who's been fighting in Kemet. He obviously got involved in a secret society like the Knights Templars and others who will come after him will do. And he comes back home, and they bury him with the symbols of Freemasonry on his tomb. There's a close-up of the tools. Wear your apron, Pharaoh. Look at that beautiful apron. You go into the lodge today, you will find a similar apron being worn by the worshipful masters, the grand masters, and the past masters. Pharaoh, the god Ptah, is called the architect of the universe. In Masonry, the only way you refer to God is as the architect of the universe, or the great architect. Again, I'm not at liberty to translate this, but this is a Masonic treaty. This is the real symbol of one of the highest deities of Freemasonry, Ptah. Again, Ptah. I just like this one because it shows you where they stole the Academy Award. Took Ptah and made him the Academy Award. That is deep. They need to give us our stuff back. This is a symbol out of Freemasonry, and this is the symbol right out of Kemet. Yesterday, today, and tomorrow. This is one of the centerpieces of Freemasonry. The Pharaoh weighing their aprons as they're moving through the underworld. And these are some of the symbols. It's called do-gods, or the fellow craft. This one is called the cable toe. In Kemet, we wear it around our waist in the craft. In the European, they wear it around his neck. This is called the 5 points of fellowship. When you meet a Mason in the street, if you want to check, see if a man is a Mason, there's a hug you can give him, and the 5 point of which you touch, and he'll know that you're a brother. This one, that's one of the do-gods of a certain degree. This one is if a man is in distress, and he raises his arms in that way. If there's any fellow Masons around, they'll come to see what help can be or assistance we can give to you. So, this one, Pharaoh, giving the sign of fidelity. The sign of fidelity is a sign you give at a certain time to show respect for yourself and respect for what is being said or discussed, or deference and reference to God. And so you can see, I think this is Pharaoh Khufu, who's giving the sign of fidelity. We're looking at one of the kings of England, and we're looking at other European Masons as they're given the sign of fidelity. This is the 5 point of fellowship. You can find a number of instances in the tomb where the Pharaoh and God is giving the 5 point of fellowship. This is the Egyptian god Tefnut, representing moisture, giving the sign of distress and the signs of calling for assistance. And of course, what I'm putting on the side is what you will actually see in the lodge. And the Egyptian god of the Nile, holding the all-seeing eye, giving the sign of the first degree. That's the sign of this degree. He's given the sign, and this is the way it would look in the books they teach us in the lodge. This is the Egyptian god Haru, giving the sign of the second degree. And this is what it would look like in the lodge. And this is Haru giving the sign of the second degree. I remember when I was going to this degree, because I did all my degrees, rather than in 2 years, I did all my degrees in one night. By the time I got to this one, my legs had given out, and they had to give me a chair. This is the Pharaoh in his master's apron, giving the sign of the Master Mason, which is this sign, No, you ain't going to get me doing that on camera now, because then I'll be in trouble with my brothers and have to explain it to them. But you see him wearing his apron, and he's giving the sign. You see him giving the sign. So this is another, I was trying to find a sculpt, but I couldn't find the sculpt. I found this painting in reference to one of the temples in Kemet. Again, part of the ritual you go through when they talk about their god, the great master builder Hiram Abiff being killed by the three Vandals, but then life is given back to him and he's raised from the dead back to a living perpendicular on the square. And this is a drawing out of a book that's done by ancient Romans on the temples in Kemet. This is an apron, what an apron, a Kemetian apron looks like. You can find facsimiles very close to these aprons being worn in every lodge in the world today. Here you see the pharaohs wearing their aprons. You see the pharaoh wearing his apron and carrying his mace. You see King Tut in his apron with his mace and staff in hand with his ornament around his neck. You see this thing around his neck? When you go into a lodge, all of the masters of the lodge and those who are the officers of the lodge wear something similar to this around their neck. They wear an apron like this. The master will carry his mace in his hands. Again, another pharaoh in the same posture. And this is the pharaoh in the Grand East with his junior deacon and senior deacon at his side. So I just want Harut to say, hooray. We always at the end of it. This is the certified, this is the symbol of the Prince Hall Temple here in Harlem. This is the building of the Prince Hall Temple up at 155th Street. There's 175 different lodges that work out of this temple. I work out of this temple in one of the lodges.
Right on St. Nick.
The all-seeing eye of Horus, the son of Osiris and Isis, or Osir and Aset. The red pyramid of Dashur. And you remember the all-seeing eye and the red pyramid. And then they culminate in this, the seal of the United States of America. The all-seeing eye and the pyramid. So they just take your stuff and play games with you. The symbol of Horus and the seal of the Pharaoh of Egypt becomes the seal of the United States of America. Okay? Go back. Ra. Come forward. Ra is now a cluster of stars. You know? So you go back, or go forward, and there's the President of the United States. Let me tell you something about this guy. You remember when he was inaugurated on the first time? And you remember the judge made a mistake. You remember the judge made a mistake and stuttered, and they said he had to redo the oath 3 days later? Because it took 3 days to raise him to the 3rd degree of a Master Mason, because he could not take that oath as President of the United States because he wasn't a Master Mason. So if you watch the inauguration, they give the full oath to Vice President Biden with no stuttering, because Biden was a Freemason. But they couldn't give the full oath to him because he wasn't a Freemason, so the judge was trying to cut that piece out, but he stumbled over it. So they had to raise the brother to the 3rd degree. Then they gave him the oath, remember, on the 3rd day in the White House behind closed doors. Okay. Is this the Eastern Star in ancient Egypt? Wow. We invented chess and cartoons too. Check that out now. It may not seem serious to you, but we invented animated cartoons, and they're playing chess. An Egyptian queen playing chess. A scene from the tomb of Abydos. Is this an airplane? Is this a helicopter? Is this a submarine? What are these? This is in the walls of the tomb in Abydos. One more thing, it's not over yet. I'm going to slip from Kemet in the Americas just to show you how slick the European think he is, but how you can pull the cover off of him. This is the biggest pyramid in the world, Pyramid of the Sun in Mexico. You can't see it because they don't have the right angle. That's an Ankh. There's an Ankh in front of this pyramid in Mexico. I got to get a better facsimile and send it to you so you can actually see the Ankh. But there's more. That's how it's magnificent. This is the Mayan pyramid, which is further south. But this is what I wanted to close with. This is a pre-Columbian Mayan king of Central America wearing his apron, carrying his mace in hand,
Right there.
and got the skull and bones on his hat. All right, white Masons, give it up. It ain't yours. It's ours. All right? We're taking it back. It's a school of thought on how to construct human character, how to understand cosmology and ecology, and the relationship between cosmology, ecology, human anatomy, human mind, and the interrelationship that's developed between all of them and an understanding of your beingness. You know, that's what they teach. That's the big secret that they're holding, is the methodology, the steps by which these teachings take place in a scientific manner, in a healthy way, so that you can develop, supposedly develop healthily, but so many people are buying degrees and going through, and people doing devious stuff, that people are taking good truth and use it to hurt humanity. Peace and blessings, brothers and sisters. That's the end of that. I wanted to walk you through that because I wanted you to see how dense you are. Dense meaning how deep you are, how your way of life over all of those centuries we just walked through, all of those leaders is black, visually black. It shows you that they're black, and that all of the things that the West have claimed to be their own, including Freemasonry, is yours. It is a tool, it's an instrument. You need to learn it. You need how to use and master the science that makes it up, to teach yourself how to organize your mind, organize your family, organize your community, organize your institution, so that you can provide for yourself food, clothing, shelter, safety, and security by controlling the economics, politics, and culture where you live. And you can't do that unless you control the real estate, unless you control the schools, unless you control the police and the firemen. And we're not going to be able to do that until you control your mind. And so this kind of knowledge will help you take your mind back so you can be black and not be afraid to be black. Whether you want to call it whatever you want to call it, Kemet, Moors, whatever. Just in English, I'm speaking poor cracker English. I be's black, y'all. That's who I is. I is black. Thank you, brothers and sisters. Peace and blessings.